South Jersey's home for the Sixers and Flyers.
Yeah! He scores! A two-hand jam!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Here we go on a Wednesday. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. It is a Wednesday edition of the show, and my Lord, if you've been listening at all throughout the course of the day, Greeny and the guys, the news in the NBA, it just turned the NBA upside down on its head. What also turned the NBA upside down on its head was Kevin Durant last night. Quite frankly, there's two things, and they can both be true here. You know how we say sometimes both things can be true? You can have two different ideas or thoughts, and they could both be true. Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant last night had maybe one of the most epic performances I ever saw in my life. That being said, the way that he was defended by the Milwaukee Bucks was malpractice. Mike Budenholzer should probably be fired on the spot. You talk about the impact of a coach. There's one where the impact of the coach stood out. Or maybe forget that. I'm okay blaming Giannis Antetokounmpo. What do you mean? Well, if I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo, I tell the coach, this guy's killing us. And whatever happened last night, Giannis Antetokounmpo defended Kevin Durant, who had 49 last night, or 48 in the game last night. He defended him twice the whole night. Twice! You're a first-team all-defensive team. You know, I'm having a conversation with a buddy of mine over the last couple of days. We had the conversation with Paul Hudrick on Monday's show, and I said, am I out of my mind that I would rather face the Nets almost than the Milwaukee Bucks? And he says, well, explain that. Why would you do that? I said, well, because Giannis Antetokounmpo, he is a guy that can stare eye to eye with Ben Simmons and neutralize some of the things that Simmons is very impactful at. Well, not if he's not going to defend Simmons. For God's sakes, what were they doing last night? It was awful. You had one guy, people complain about the Sixers. Well, you're playing 4-on-5. The Nets had four guys. They had three guys out there last night. Literally, it was 3-on-5. It was Durant, it was Jeff Green, and it was Joe Harris, essentially, because nobody else contributed offensively at all. And somehow the Bucks lost that game. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I've never seen anything like it before. You had one guy single-handedly beat an entire Bucks team. And it's not like it's a lousy Bucks team here. It's not like Kevin Durant by himself, went into, I don't know, who was the worst team in the league this year? Orlando, and beat the Magic. I mean, that would be understandable. He went in and played the team that has the MVP of the league, the two-time MVP of the league on it, which is another story in itself that we can get into. He went into a game against a team that has been the best team in the Eastern Conference multiple times the last two seasons. He didn't go in there and play some stiff team. I mean, what the heck was that last night? It was horrible. It was one of the most epic meltdowns I've ever seen. And it wasn't like they melted down in this way where they just absolutely choked. They just absolutely got beaten. They got beaten by a guy who just was on a mission. There's no point in that game once we got out of halftime. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I used to be a huge Kevin Durant fan. I can't get past that he took the easy way out. So that stain will always remain for me. The stain of him leaving Oklahoma City and going to Golden State, that will always remain for me. So he was my favorite guy to watch in the NBA. I mean, I still like watching him. That's the problem. I still like to watch Durant. I just don't respect him the way that I once did. He was my favorite guy in the league. And after that, I just can't get past it. I can't get past the fact that I just don't understand how a professional athlete has that mindset. By the way, they probably would have won a championship had he just stayed in Oklahoma City, for God's sakes. These are the things that bother me. Like LeBron James never had to leave Cleveland to win a championship. People would have eventually said, I want to play with LeBron James because I want to win a championship. The problem was LeBron took the easy way out and said, well, I'm going to go play with these guys because I want to win a championship. No, you're LeBron James. You make them come play with you. Same with Kevin Durant. That's what bothered me about Durant more than anything. But that's neither here nor there. So forget about the fact that Durant used to be my favorite player. He no longer is. He absolutely torched them last night. Absolutely torched them. And James Harden being out there, I guess his presence was somewhat of a pick-me-up. But for God's sakes, this is a guy that scores 30 a game. He didn't do anything last night. Holy moly. Of all the performances that I can remember, nothing stands out as much as that. By the way, what is going on in the NBA today? And more breaking news. 23 years Donnie Nelson has been the GM in Dallas, and he has decided that no longer. They are parting ways. Stan Van Gundy out as the head coach with the Pelicans. Also out as head coach is Scott Brooks in Washington. Kawhi Leonard, they fear that he has an ACL tear. He looks like he's out for the rest of the playoffs. Chris Paul, you remember when COVID was a thing? Well, apparently still is, because Chris Paul has COVID, and he might be out for the Western Conference Finals all of a sudden. I mean, what a day this is. Right? And one of the things that really stands out about that last night is the Milwaukee Bucks are a team that if they could have won that game last night, they could have been the team that closed their series out before the Sixers or Hawks do. I want to throw the Hawks in there. I don't want to say they have no shot. More on that game, of course, coming up. But the Bucks could have put themselves in position to close this thing out tomorrow night, and then they would have had the couple days to get ready for the Sixers or the Hawks. I cannot believe. Now, here's some of the issues, okay? If you watch that game last night, and we kind of hit on this a little bit, but I think we can almost further the conversation, okay? If you just watched the Bucks on offense last night, this is where, like, you know how people like talk about Ben Simmons and he could do this and he can do that? Ben Simmons could be Giannis. He could score 30. He could do the things that Giannis does. He could just be that in the regular season. Put his shoulder down, blast right past you, get to the hoop, and score 30 points. That's what we're talking about. When people say Ben Simmons could probably score 30 if he wants to, Giannis can score 30. He can. Giannis has no offensive game at all. It is almost sad. I feel bad for the guy almost, because the difference between what Giannis does and Ben Simmons is it looks like Ben Simmons is the Bobby Abreu of basketball, right? He does things so effortlessly that it pisses you off that you think he can do more. He's the Bobby Abreu of the NBA. He's so good at what he does that we don't appreciate him because he makes it look so easy when he does it. Giannis, on the other hand, he's the antithesis of that. He works his ass off and tries so hard, but at that moment, you're just like, I actually feel bad for Giannis. Am I wrong by saying, like, does anybody get what I'm saying? You watch Giannis last night. Here's a guy that you know can score 34 a night because he does it. But he simply has so limited offensively. And the difference is when you watch the Bucks and you watch the Sixers, Ben Simmons could be Giannis. He could put his shoulder down. He could take it to the rack. He could score 34. The difference is Ben Simmons has Joel Embiid. The Bucks simply don't. And the Nets last night, late in the game, I never hear anybody say the Bucks need to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? You ever hear anybody say he's holding them back, he's too limited, he's the reason why? You never hear that. He can't shoot free throws, although we made 4 of 7 last night, but he's still a liability at the line, right? Isn't he? There's no question he's a liability at the line, Giannis. He can't shoot from the outside a lick. He has Blake Griffin on him last night, late in the game. Okay, they have a chance to tie the game up. He's got Blake Griffin on him. What's Giannis shoot from 3, by the way? In these playoffs, he is shooting 17% from 3. I mean, seriously, I'd shoot 17% from 3 in a game. I'm pretty sure I would. I'm almost positive that I could hit 17% of three-point shots if you put me out there and give me the looks that he's getting. I'm not saying with a hand in my face. Just give me the looks that he's getting. Because no one's covering him because he can't make it. He's horrible from three-point range. He's terrible. At the free throw line, he's 52% in the playoffs. Giannis is 52% from the free throw line in the playoffs, which is, by the way, better than what Ben Simmons, I think, who's in the 30s. But in the regular season, Giannis is 30% from 3, which is horrendous. And he's 68% from the free throw line, which is bad. But, man, so late in that game last night, I'm wondering how many people remember this. And this is where I just felt bad for Giannis, because you could almost see it that he doesn't have it. He just doesn't have he doesn't have the skill set. He's so limited that it's amazing, though, what these guys are able to do with the inability to shoot. And nobody, sits here. I wonder what sports talk radio in Milwaukee sounds like. I mean, do they want to get rid of Giannis? Do they want to trade Giannis? Are they done with this guy because he doesn't shoot? Or he does shoot, he just can't. I mean, he pulls up the court. He's got a wide open three-pointer from the top of the key. Remember that? Late in the game, Giannis has a wide open three-point shot late in the game. And it's not even close. It's not even close. And there's a possession where he's got the ball on the right wing, and he's being defended by Blake Griffin. I mean, Blake Griffin might as well have been on the low block defending him. Seriously. He might as well have been on the low block defending him. He's like, if you're going to shoot it, have at it, buddy. And what does Giannis do? He almost shifts it into another gear, and it's like, I'm just going to bull rush my way through you. Now, I think he made the layup to make it 101-100, but my gosh, it's just painful watching him try to have to score like that. And, we talk about, Ben Simmons is the quote-unquote point guard for the Sixers. Giannis is almost like a point forward, but it's the same as what Simmons really is. He's really they're not point guards. They're just kind of guys who bring the ball up. People are like, well, it's late in the game and the Sixers can't have their point guard. Yes, they don't really have a point guard. Ben Simmons brings the ball up. This isn't 1985. Doc Rivers isn't bringing the ball up and setting the offense up. He doesn't have his hand in the air calling out plays. Right? Giannis is basically doing the same thing. He's their best player. And late in the game, what did they say during the broadcast last night? They've got to go to Middleton in the big situations because they can't. Giannis has no offensive game. It's unbelievable. And you're saying, well, why are you criticizing Giannis? I'm not criticizing Giannis. I'm saying they need Giannis. But this is my point about Simmons. He could score 35 points in that fashion. It's not good enough. You can't be that guy and expect to win. The Bucks can't win with that. The difference is Ben has other help. Their other help is just not good enough. Middleton's is a number 3 guy, a low-end to Drew Holiday's a good player. I don't know what the heck's happened to him in this series. He's not shooting it well either. But Giannis not playing defense on Durant last night. I don't know what the heck that was. But you look at the two guys last night. Giannis is a 2-time back-to-back MVP. And he has to bull rush his way to get points. I mean, it is, my God, he's working his ass off to try to score. Meanwhile, Durant comes down, bang, 26-foot three-pointer. Jeez. Oh, man. The Nets are going to win that series. The Nets are going to win that series. Now, the whole NBA has basically turned upside down in his head. We'll get into that. Mitch Lawrence tonight at 5. Text message board is open. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Like, you watch Giannis last night and wonder, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe people do say, hey, they have got to think about moving him or they can't win with him. But I don't hear people ever say that. The guy's been the MVP of the league twice. But how many people out there say, this guy's the MVP of the league, but they can't win with him? I don't think the Bucks can win with him. Remember when we say 5 teams can win, and I had the Bucks in that? I'm wrong. I don't know that you can win because he's the best player on the best team. 609-403-0973. Here we go. The Greek freak problem, well, probably, I don't know what this means. The Greek freak problem, well, probably, well, it must be speech to text because I can't figure that, but he says Milwaukee's problem is bad coaching. They should have double-teamed and triple-teamed Kevin Durant and meet the rest of the team and make the rest of the team beat this. I agree with that their game plan last night was malpractice. Terrible. It was horrendous. I mean, but they've gone into this saying, look, P.J. Tucker has been a problem for Kevin Durant, so we're going to stick with that, right? And I mean, that is where the coach has an impact on the game, is that he doesn't make that switch. But I almost would blame Giannis there. Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're the best player on the team. You tell the coach, hey, I got him. If your coach is not going to make that adjustment, that's when we say this is a players' league. And that player can step in and put his foot down and say, yo, coach, he's torching us. I've got him. I'm just flabbergasted that nobody stepped in there last night and said, we got to do something different here, coach. I mean, come on. Yes, you could say that's the coach's fault. I don't have a problem with that. It's malpractice what they didn't make an adjustment in that game. I mean, seriously. He abused them last night. He absolutely abused that defense last night. For them not to double and triple team here, he was the only guy they had. It was the only guy they had last night. And somehow their game plan was, hey, let's let Durant just go. Let's go one-on-one. I mean, he would take the inbounds pass. It was like, I used to play NBA Live like 98, and I would have Allen Iverson, and you just hit like the accelerator button and just blow past everybody. That's what he was doing. He just literally got the inbounds pass, came up the court, hit the accelerator around half court, took a beeline for the right elbow, and just blasted his way to the basket. Easy deuce after easy deuce. And then once he did that, then he's stopping, pulling up fadeaways. He entered the three-point zone after a while. It was unbelievable. Poetry in motion, to be honest with you. Quite fun to watch. I mean, my girlfriend was like, this is pretty good. At some point, she's like, they can't stop this guy. I'm like, yeah, how about putting somebody else on him? Or 2, or even 3? But I don't know, man. I mean, Giannis actually, he had a good game last night. I mean, if you look at it at the end of the night, and you said, all right, let's just don't watch the game. Hand me the score sheet. Giannis Antetokounmpo. How did it go for him last night? All right. How do you complain with the efficiency that he had last night. He was 14 of 22. He only missed 7 shots last night. He actually hit 2 threes. He was 2 for 4 from 3. He was okay from the free throw line, 4 of 7. They mentioned during the broadcast. That's better than you would anticipate from the way he's going. He had 34 points and 12 rebounds last night. I mean, that's a monster game. But the problem is they don't have enough around him, and the Nets are willing to just kind of let him take it to the basket and score. And that's where I think the Sixers changed their approach. Hey, we don't need you to take it to the basket and score. We need you to get the other people to score. I mean, Middleton, 3 for 10 last night, 30%. Not good enough. You're going to take 10 threes. You got to do better than 30%. I mean, even Holiday, 3 for 7 isn't awful. You make 3 threes. Lopez gave you 3 threes last night. PJ Tucker got abused and he didn't score a point. You got to do something better than that. All right, that's how we start today. So much NBA news. 609-403-0973. Mike, Coach Bud is an idiot. The fact that they keep launching threes is an issue, not going to your strengths of going down low. It seems like the coach is preventing actual change. Well, that's who they are. They're a 3-point shooting team. They don't have a post presence. Who the heck is going to go? I mean, you could say Giannis, but Giannis is scoring all his points in the paint. And by the way, for God's sakes, last night they shot 40% from 3, and this guy's complaining that they shot too many threes. So who's the idiot? If I shoot 40% from 3, I better win that game. 40% they made from 3-point range last night. That would be number 1 in the league if you shot 40% from 3 points. They didn't shoot. You shouldn't have made them stop shooting. You should have said, Giannis, stop shooting and give it to somebody else. Coach Bud and Brett Brown are both off the Popovich tree, and somehow Popovich is the best coach we think of all time, and those two are idiots, apparently. Again, this goes back to maybe we're putting too much stock in the coach. Over on the text board, 609-403-0973. There's no way in hell you go 17% from three-point land in NBA playoff game of a series. No way in hell. From your guy, Big Ash. Well, Big Ash, if I got the looks that he gets, I bet you I make 17%. Nobody defending me, standing out there, all by myself. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo doesn't have anybody near him. Nobody. Yeah, I'm making 17%. Facts. That's facts right there. All right, we get started with that. Mike McGarry at 2:40 today. We're busy on the show. Hudrick, Inside the Sixers, and so much more here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. All right, Sports Bash on a Wednesday. It's brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. The phone number, 609-573-3776 in our 8 South Jersey counties. 609-573-ESPN in Delaware and beyond, wherever you might be listening or watching the show. You can always text us at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973, or if you're watching the video stream at 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So we have a ton of NBA news today and how it impacts these playoffs. Because, I mean, if you didn't know by now that this thing is wide open. I mean, LeBron James is gone. You have a whole situation where injuries now are creeping in, and they are creeping in everywhere. The Clippers have lost Kawhi Leonard. It looks like he is done for the rest of the season. They fear that he has an ACL injury, and that would mean he is not coming back, obviously. It turned out to be something much bigger than it originally looked like. I mean, the other night he looked like he was fine, and all of a sudden, I mean, he had a monster game the other night. Then he was out for the game with a sprained knee, and now they fear that he has an ACL injury. Unbelievable turn of events there. So the Clippers essentially are now done. If you thought the Clippers, hey, they have the best player, they've got Kawhi, they absolutely have the best player left. Well, you saw last night that they don't have the best player left, but at least on the Western side, that is now out. Number 2, Chris Paul is out indefinitely. This is a bizarre situation because he is in the NBA's health and safety protocols because he tested positive for COVID. Now, I had read that he does have the vaccine, which changes. How does this change the whole situation, Josh? You were explaining this to me earlier. He is sidelined indefinitely as a result of entering the protocols. Now, if he is vaccinated, which I have read that he was, how does that change the situation here?
So just to give a baseline, the baseline is if you are not vaccinated, you basically will be out 7 to 14 days. If you're vaccinated, it's 5 to 10 days. So you have a little bit less time that you are forced to be out. But the reason why it's indefinite is because we don't know the details of if he's symptomatic or asymptomatic. If he's symptomatic, that 5 to 10 days starts the day you stop having symptoms. Then after those 5 days, if you've had the vaccine, you get tested again. If you clear the test, you should be good to go. If you don't clear the test, comes back inconclusive, or test again, then you re-hit the cycle for another 5 days.
So they're saying indefinitely. Would we think there's a chance? Now, if the Jazz end this series by winning the next 2,
right,
the Western Conference Finals are set to start on Sunday.
Correct. He would not be available for Sunday.
So it appears that Chris Paul will not play Sunday regardless. If they play Sunday.
Now,
if that series stretches.
And it starts Tuesday.
And that Western Conference playoff would then begin on Tuesday.
There's a possibility he could be there for that.
Okay, so that is interesting. Because now you've got Chris Paul and Kawhi Leonard possibly out on that side of the bracket. And that would leave the Jazz as a clear favorite then.
Yeah.
No question about it.
It goes back to your theory, Mike, which is always the best player makes, the best player on the floor. Who's the best player on the floor? Well, if there's no Kawhi, then it's Donovan Mitchell, right?
It's either him or Devin Booker.
Right.
Right? I mean, and they don't have Conley either.
Right. No Conley. He's still having that hamstring situation.
Yeah, if you tell me Paul is out and Kawhi is out.
Yeah, the Clippers might even get out of this round.
Yeah, I don't see the Clippers winning without Kawhi.
I don't either. I don't see how they could. No offense to Paul Pierce, but Paul George, but he's not Paul Pierce.
No, there's no way. And the rest of that team, I said the other day, Kawhi had a better team around him in Toronto than he does in LA. He left
100%.
Toronto to go to LA, and he took a lesser team.
He did. And part of it is because the Clippers front office, which is, by the way, run by Lawrence Frank. How about that name from the past there? Former Nets head coach. He apparently thought that, bringing Paul George in was going to solve all their problems, and it hasn't. Mike.
Well, of course. I mean, you get two guys like that. Everyone's like, oh, my God, they got those two guys. Well, Paul George is just a good player. He's not great. I mean, he's great at times, but he's not always great, which means he's only good. If he was always great, yeah, he'd be great. The problem is he's not always great. He's good more than he's great. And that means he's not a great player. He's a good player. He's an all-star player. He is he's like an upgraded version of like Chris Middleton, like that level. Yeah. He's a little like a little better than what Chris Middleton wouldn't have done what Paul George did when he was on the Pacers.
Right.
Like Paul George took them to the precipice of the finals as the best player on a team. But we're going on like 10 years now.
Paul George is higher on the tiers than Chris Middleton, but lower on the tiers than, let's say, Donovan Mitchell or Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I don't look, Paul George to me, good player, not great player, can't be the best player on the team now. They ain't beating the Jazz with just Paul George.
No way.
Can the Suns with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton match up with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert? And then, of course, the rest of the cast you got to like map out. But they would now be your two best guys, on both sides. You got DeAndre Ayton and Gobert, who doesn't score all that much. And you have Booker trying to go bucket for bucket with Donovan Mitchell.
Which he could do.
That turns into an interesting series. But you put Chris Paul there, I think I like the Suns.
And if you're the NBA, if you're the people over in New York at NBA front offices, you need Chris Paul to come back because you don't want an NBA Finals with the Utah Jazz.
Well, they're in trouble anyway, okay? You're getting Phoenix, Utah, and you ain't getting LA without
But at
Kawhi.
least Phoenix has Chris Paul. They have Devin Booker. They have
sure. I mean, it's
stars.
Definitely better than Utah in terms of marketing situation.
Right.
Now, Utah's the number one seed. Can you try to squeeze blood from that stone? The number one seeded Jazz. They've been the underdog all year. No one believed in them. Maybe. But neither one of those teams pushes the pile.
Right. The team you really wanted was Kawhi and the Clippers, but now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
The interesting part is Brooklyn, nobody cares about them either.
Well, it's funny.
They're just the villains.
Everyone cares about Brooklyn outside of New York. No one in New York cares about the Nets.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, 2:35. McGarry on the other side. And coming up, we'll talk to McGarry. If Joel Embiid, he said after the game, I got to do better after Game 4. But Kenny, I'll discuss with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City when he joins me next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 2:40, till the top. Sixers tonight on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, you can hear the action with Tom McGinnis on the call. Game 5, pivotal. Sixers need this one at home. They'll go to Atlanta on Friday night. And then a Game 7 would be on Sunday night at 8 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. You hope it doesn't get to that point. But Mike McGarry wrote at the Press of Atlantic City as he ponders, can Joel Embiid? He knows he needs to get better. But can he? I mean, we see what he did on Monday night, Mike. Does he look like a guy that's maybe hit that wall, the proverbial, hey, I gave it all I got, but this is all I am now?
I don't think so. And one reason I don't think so is he did grab 21 rebounds the other night. So while he went 0 for 12 from the floor in the second half, 21 rebounds is no small feat. So I think, obviously the knee was bothering him, but he was still healthy enough to grab 21 rebounds. And that would give me some hope for Game 5 and the rest of the series.
All right. So how important is it for the Sixers? I like it. I asked you this, Mike. They had the game against Washington where he left in the middle of the game or early in that game, and they just looked discombobulated. And then when they played without him the next time, they looked fine. Do they now prepare for not having him as a big part of the offense tonight, knowing that he's maybe limited?
They might, but I think they need him. I mean, this is, the Hawks are a step up in class from the Wizards. I think if Joel Embiid is not on the court and making an impact, this series might be tough for the Sixers the rest of the way. So they can prepare all they want, but they're going to need Joel Embiid out there to play a big role in games 5, 6, and possibly game 7.
There's no doubt that that's a key. They need to have him out there. But next up on the list for you, Mike, what also has to be different tonight than was in game 4?
Well, I mean, I hate to come back to the thing that we seem to talk to after every playoff game, but Ben Simmons has to be aggressive offensively, the way he was early in the third quarter of game 3. You know, I'm not asking for elbow jumpers. I'm not asking for three-point shots. But what I am asking is for you to take the ball aggressively to the rim when you have opportunities and look to score. He can't shoot just one shot in the second half of the game, especially if Joel Embiid is struggling and comes out tonight and doesn't look as good as he did early in the series. So, I mean, we need the Ben Simmons of the third quarter of game 3. And I don't know why we don't get that Ben Simmons on a more consistent basis.
I think that might go down. If he is this guy for the rest of his career, and there's no reason to think that this isn't who he is, that will be the biggest question ever at the end of the day. It's why was this all that he ever wanted to be? Don't you think? Like, if he has can Oprah sit down with him and say, why was this all you ever wanted to be?
I mean, and you go back to the beginning of the playoffs, right? And I looked at the Toronto series from 2 years ago, and we saw he played 51 minutes in the fourth quarter of that series and took 6 shots. Again, I'm not thinking about, three-pointers, elbow jumpers. What I am talking about is being aggressive around the rim, getting to the rim. You know, in game 3, I knew a few people that had a rooting interest in seeing Ben Simmons score more than 13 and a half points. And in the first half, I was getting texts like, is this guy trying not to score? Because he was literally at the rim and throwing the ball back out to the perimeter. And this is the complaint about Simmons, right? We know he can be a good player on a winning team. He does stuff that helps you win games. However, what people want from him is when Embiid is struggling and going 0 for 12 tonight, when Embiid is, who knows what he'll be like, people want Simmons to come out and sort of put his offensive will on the game.
Yeah, I agree. Look, hey, I've been a guy who defends Simmons. The first half I thought he played well. The second half, I thought that Trae Young really took the momentum and the pace and the style. He changed the way that the game kind of stylistically went and really took that from. That's what Simmons does really well. He controls the pace and the style of the game, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for that because you don't score points with that. But Young took that away from him, and I don't think Simmons ever really got it back at any point in that game.
Yeah, well, I think Atlanta, at some point, it became more of a half-court game, and that's where Simmons, except for the first 6 or 7 minutes of Game 3 in the third quarter, kind of struggles. And it's, as we go back to its inability to, want to be aggressive offensively. The foul shooting is an issue. You saw it last night to a degree with Giannis. I mean, yeah. Giannis is a more, at 34 points last night, is obviously a better offensive player than Simmons, but a lot of the things that sort of hampered Simmons hampered Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks last night.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, and that's why I say, I think Ben Simmons could be Giannis. He could score 30 if he wanted to. Just put your shoulder down, gets to the basket. But I think in the end, you see that the limitations of Giannis scoring 30 still isn't good enough. You can't win with a guy who's that limited. You have to have the other pieces. Milwaukee does not. Philadelphia, you think, does?
Well, with Embiid, yes, because to me it comes down to, again, playoff basketball, and really basketball at any level comes down to, in the fourth quarter of a close game, who are we throwing the ball to, and is that guy able to create shots for himself and teammates? Giannis is not able to do it in the last 3 minutes of the game. Simmons really isn't able to do it. That doesn't mean they're not great players. I mean, Shaq couldn't do it. That's why he had Kobe do it for him, or Dwayne Wade do it for him. The Milwaukee Bucks are trying to do it with Chris Middleton. The Nets did it last night with Kevin Durant. I'd rather do it with Kevin Durant than Chris Middleton.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, that's the problem, though. You heard, if you were watching that game last night, you heard them mention during the game that, hey, late in the game, they typically have to go through Middleton for their big moment because Giannis can't. I mean, Mike, Blake Griffin was playing him on the low block and saying, do what you need to, man. And Giannis just says, all right, let me shift it into a barrel right through you. I mean, that's all he's got offensively. Now, he did make 2 of 4 from 3-point range last night, so he is willing to try, but the other team's saying, go ahead, and he knows his limitations from there. So I almost feel bad for Giannis because I said earlier, Mike, Ben Simmons is like the Bobby Abreu of the NBA. He does things like it's such an effortless look that it frustrates people as to why. And then meanwhile, you see Giannis out there just lowering his shoulder and trying as hard as he can to score 2 points. It's like, man, I feel bad for him sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, again, it's when you get in these discussions, you feel bad because you feel like you're dumping on Giannis. You're dumping on a guy who had 34 points last night and is a 2-time MVP of the league. But, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and that's one of his weaknesses. I think the thing with Simmons is the other night is people are just wondering, why can't we get the Simmons who played the first 6-7 minutes of the third quarter of game 3? Why can't we get that guy on a more consistent basis? And especially if Embiid is hobbled tonight, I think you need that guy. Now, I think the Sixers are going to come out fired up tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if Simmons had a great first quarter, if they were able to push the pace and get out to a big lead. But, it's funny. The other night in the second quarter, the Sixers are up 18. I'm saying to myself, wow, the Nets and the Bucks are in a series here that's going to go 7 games. I'm not scared of Utah and Phoenix, or the Clippers. I'm thinking to myself, wow, the Sixers could win an NBA title. And then at the end of the game, I'm like, the Sixers now are in a life and death struggle with the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. How this thing, I mean, you watch that game, I'm sure you're watching Brooklyn last night, and you're like, they're down, and you're like, man, and then all of a sudden, Harden didn't do a thing, and he's on the court for 40-plus minutes, and they somehow, like we talk about, well, the Sixers are playing 4-on-5. The Nets were playing 3-on-5 last night and still beat the Bucks. So, I don't know. There was a part of me that said, man, it called me crazy, but I almost rather play the Nets, and part of it was because Giannis really takes away what Simmons does effectively, like seeing over defense, being able to kind of get that matchup with the smaller guy. But they didn't even use Giannis on Durant last night. So now that whole series, I don't know that the Bucks come back and win that thing.
You know what? I kind of take a different view there. I think the Bucks come back and win Game 6, and we're in a Game 7 in Brooklyn Saturday night. Because if I'm the Bucks, I look at this. I'm going home where I've already won 2 games, right? And last night we should have won the game. And it took an all-time playoff game from Kevin Durant, one of the greatest games I've ever seen, to beat us. What do you have, 49? If he scores 45, they lose. The Nets lose. So if I'm Milwaukee, I think Milwaukee wins Game 6, and then we're back in Game 7 in Brooklyn. Now, I think Brooklyn wins Game 7, but I wouldn't count the Bucks out right yet.
A lot of talk about, hey, do they rest Harden? Do they even rest Durant and just put all their chips into a Game 7?
I think you got to go, I think you got to think about whether or not you can play Harden. I mean, 44 minutes on that hamstring is really remarkable. I think a lot of it you got to take into account where is Kyrie Irving health-wise. I think you go out there to try and win Game 6, but let's say you're down 12 early in the third quarter or you fall behind double digits. Then I think you pull the plug and say, let's rest some guys and gear up for a Game 7. Because, Durant played all 48 minutes last night. What's he going to go, 48, and 48? I don't know,
What, if he does, that's a bad look for the other guys around who aren't giving you more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I thought Durant last night really reminded us, he really hasn't been on the national stage like in 2 years. We forget that in 2018, 2019, he might have been or probably was the best player in the world. And, the other thing you forget is he's 7'1". He's as tall as Embiid. And look how skilled he is with the ball and his shot. Really just a remarkable performance last night.
Hey, one thing on the Sixers real fast and the Hawks. In Game 1, they shot the lights out. They hit 23s. They have not shot the ball well since that game and pulled out a win while not shooting. If you're the Sixers, are you a little concerned that they still have one more game of bombs away in them?
Well, absolutely. That the series is 2-2 now. That's the sort of situation you put yourself in by blowing Game 4. Now all of a sudden the Hawks can come out. They've already done it in one game. Who says they can't come out tonight and sink 20-something 3-pointers and now you're down 2?
I think they have another game left in them where they shoot way over their average. I mean, in 3-pointers, they can't keep missing wide open looks.
Right. Doc Rivers said it best after the game. He said they blew a golden opportunity, and they did. These teams have played 16 quarters now, right? 4 games. What have the Sixers been? The best team in 13 of those 16 quarters, probably. It's really the first quarter of game one and the second half of game four, where you can say the Hawks actually got the better of the Sixers. So the Sixers have outplayed them in 13 of 16 quarters, yet here we are 2-2, and now you've opened yourself up to. Who says Trae Young can't come in and get hot? Who says Bogdanovich can't get hot? Who says the Hawks can all of a sudden, force a seventh game, and then who knows what's going to happen in there. You put yourself in position where you're letting a lot of variables come into place where you could have put it, you could have been closing out the series tonight and gotten yourself 5 or 6 days of rest, again, getting ready to face an exhausted and banged up Brooklyn team or a Milwaukee team that had just been through a 7-game series.
Doesn't happen much, but we agree. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, what's happening locally? A couple baseball games today.
Yeah, absolutely. About to head out as soon as we finish up here. We've got the Holy Spirit playing for the state non-public B title against Morristown Beard at 4 o'clock. And then that'll followed up by St. Augustine at 7 o'clock for the non-public A title against St. Joe Montville. And we still have the St. Joe softball team will play for a state title on Friday. And then on Saturday night, Ocean City goes for the state Group 3 baseball title. So a great baseball season. There's only 6 state title games in New Jersey high school baseball, and we got Cape Atlantic League teams in 3 of them. So 50% ain't bad, Mike.
That's pretty good. And obviously, Mike will be covering them if you want updates at AC Press McGarry. So will you be in Philly tonight, or will you be watching baseball?
I will be watching baseball, but following the Sixers from afar, and then I'll be should be back at the house for the post-game Zoom press conferences.
All right, there he goes. Mike will be back on Friday, and follow him at AC Press McGarry for all the scores for Holy Spirit, St. Augustine, and all the high school updates. All right, Mike, thanks, man.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
He'll be back on Friday as we will mix it back up here with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. He makes a good point. The point we bring up is, hey, they have not shot the ball well since game one. Is there another game in them where they shoot the ball well? Is that game tonight? It better be if they want to win it. 609-403-0973. My prediction would be this. If Atlanta doesn't shoot they've got to shoot, again, over their average percentage from three-point range, which is about 37%. They've got to be about 39-40% to win this game tonight, I think. If they shoot poorly again like they did in game 4, they're going to lose tonight. That's how poorly the Sixers played in game 4, is that a below-average shooting night from the Hawks allowed them to win that game. They can't do that on the road tonight. I hope I'm right. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Hour 2 of the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. The free mobile app. You can download the mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. And take the show on the go on your phone, laptop, computer, anywhere you go, where you listen to any audio. You can listen to the Sports Bash anywhere you get audio. It's pretty crazy, to be honest with you. As people watch the show, and more people are like, hey, I'm watching the show. And then I got other people like, hey, I hear you talking about watching the show. How can I do that? Well, it's pretty easy. You know how it's like you have to watch the Phillies game on YouTube? Same thing. Just search 973 ESPN. Get involved in the chat. A lot of you are today, and I appreciate that. Let's see what we got today. Jeff, now let's start with Rodney today. Rodney. Guys, as great as Durant was last night, we also had a classic James Harden playoff performance going 0 for 8 from 3. Yes, kicking him while he's down. I don't know what Harden provided last night other than, hey, I'm out there. But obviously, I don't think they win a championship with James Harden playing like that. I don't know if I'm going out on a limb there, but that gives the Bucks, the Sixers, and any team out west the ability to still win this thing with them still being the favorite. You know, we talk about prop swap a lot. This is where I buy a ticket for another team because I don't know that the Nets, like this, as constructed, win a title. Jeff is watching on YouTube. James Harden managed to never go into even a halfway jog and still can play point guard more effective than Ben Simmons. Ben isn't a point guard. Let it go. Well, if you were listening earlier, Jeff, I just said Ben is not a point guard realistically. His position is labeled as that, but I wouldn't label him, quite frankly, as a point guard. I think he's just positionless basketball. He is the guy that sets up their offense. Whatever you want to call that, I wouldn't call him a traditional point guard by any. There aren't point guards anymore. Who's a traditional point guard? Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo. Who else? Who else in the league today would you classify as a quote-unquote point guard? I mean, I guess Trae Young is a point guard for them. I mentioned Chris Paul. There's not too many. Like Doc Rivers was a point guard. He was the guy who came down in the half court, set the offense up, called out the plays. Now, I mean, Kevin Durant's not a point guard, but he brought the ball up last night half the night. Not a point guard, but he played quote-unquote point guard. I mean, if you're bringing the ball up the court, most people are going to call you the point guard on that possession. So if I inbound the ball after a basket and I give the ball to Kevin Durant, he's not a point guard, but he's basically running that role. And that's essentially what Ben Simmons does. I don't think he's a point guard, but there's no positions anymore. Joel Embiid's a center. Well, he shoots the ball from all over the court. Is he really a center or is he just a big guy? That's all there is now. You have wings and bigs. So, yeah, sure, Jeff. He's not a point guard. Let's see. What else? 609-403-0973. Jeff continues to say he's not even a point forward. Doc phased him out and made him a screener. He facilitates in transition and 1/2 in this series from the low block. There's no positions. There's not a point forward. There's not a point guard. There's not a center. So, Jeff, if you want to use these antiquated labels, sure, he's not a point guard. He's not this. He's that. He's just a part of their offense. Whatever part that is on any given night. One night he's the ball screener. See, people, look at the scoring again and say the points. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's not a point guard. I don't know what the heck he is. He's just a guy who puts his shoulder down and happens to be 7 foot tall. And what he does is he gets so deep into the paint, and I mean, he's chiseled, and he's just stronger than people. And he just muscles his way to the basket. I think Giannis, what he is a much better finisher than Ben Simmons is in the painted area. He'll come up and do that little right hand kind of, I don't want to say hook because it's kind of like straight on, but he's a better shot maker in the painted area than Ben Simmons is. But I don't know what position Giannis Antetokounmpo is. I mean, he's not a point guard, but he brings the ball up a lot for them. I don't know. Is he a point forward? Maybe. I mean, whatever. What does that even matter? There's no positions anymore. Clark Burns is watching on Facebook. Hey, Clark, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit the share button on Facebook, if you will. I would appreciate that. Mike, I watched Kevin Durant play 49 minutes last night. Tell me why Simmons can't play 48 minutes or Curry. I can't stand when Doc Rivers goes all bench with Harris and the Hawks always climb back into the game. I have no problem with that statement there. In fact, I said it to McGarry is if you got a guy playing 48 minutes, that's making some of these other guys look like, hey, why can't you give me more minutes? I will never understand this whole fascination where teams are playing 9, 10 guys at any point. There's no need to play a guy 9, 10, 11 guys. The starting players in the playoffs should be able to give you 38 to 40 minutes every single game. I don't care that they're playing every single night of the week. They don't play at all during the regular season. During the regular season, you want to play 32, 35 minutes, fine. In the regular season, Ben Simmons, fine. He should be out there. I have no problem with Clark's comment there. He should be out there 40 minutes. These guys should be out there 40 freaking minutes. It's ridiculous the way they use these bench guys. There's not that much talent in the league. There's not enough talent in this league that you could play your starters that much. Right? That drives me nuts. Is you're in the playoff game, you have to have, like tonight, you have to have this game tonight. You cannot let Atlanta win this game. Cannot. You got to play your guys. Tobias Harris should play 42 minutes tonight. Joel Embiid, if his knee allows him, should play as many minutes as possible. He should not take that stretch of time off to get a rest. Kevin Durant didn't look like he needed a rest after playing 48 minutes last night. Sorry. And guess what? Ben Simmons, if you needed him to, should be able to play the full 48. So should Tobias Harris and all these guys. So, yeah, Clark, I don't have a problem with that. I think the Sixers need to give the starters more minutes together, keep them playing, and close this series out. Win the next two, take the break. I would imagine Bucks and Nets go 7. That game 7 would be on Saturday, and close this thing out Friday night. Play these guys. This whole, you can't play that many minutes. They can play that many minutes. They can play that many minutes. There's no question they can play that many minutes. These coaches just, hey, for whatever reason, Doc Rivers is going deep. He's keeping that 10, 11 guys going. I mean, for God's sakes, don't like it. 609-403-0973. Mike, Jeff Green was huge last night for the Nets. He was. He kept them in that game. If Jeff Green didn't do what he did in the first half of that game, they would have been down almost 30. Right? Mike, Coach Bud hasn't changed at all in 3 years, and Giannis shouldn't be running the point. They are better when he's cutting and slashing. It doesn't matter that they shot 40 from the 3 when you shoot yourself out of a win. Jacking up long jumpers when you're 17 is a recipe. When you're up 17 is a recipe for disaster. It happened to the Sixers last game. It's coaching. Hey, you blame the coach, dude. You be the guy that blames the coach. You must have been the guy that the coach didn't play enough, and you're blaming the coach for whatever shortcomings is out there. That's a team that shot 40% from 3. That's who they are. Give me a guy on that team that you're saying they don't have cutting and slashing players. You want them to do something that they're not, though. You're better when they're cut. Giannis can't cut and slash when they've got a wall set up like it's like the Great Wall of China over there. It's different in the regular season, dude. Like, yeah, Giannis is better when he's cutting and slashing. Well, not when there's 3 guys in the middle of the paint. It's a different game in the playoffs. You see how they defend these guys differently. Yeah, Giannis is better when he's cutting and slashing. He's 1-on-1. Well, not when it's 4-on-1. It's coaching. We always want to blame the coach. Constantly, we want to blame the coach. We want to blame the coach. Their roster configuration isn't what you're asking for. Chris Middleton is not a put the ball on the floor kind of guy. That's just not what his strong suit is. Chris Middleton's a guy that shoots the ball from 3. You know, and they don't have a low post center. I mean, Brook Lopez, if you haven't noticed, doesn't hang out in the paint at all. Brook Lopez has turned himself into a stretch 5. That's what he is. I mean, he's not like, they don't have a back to the basket guy. I mean, what guy on that team What guy on that team are you telling me is going to put the ball on the floor and create a shot? P.J. Tucker? Pat Connaughton? Bryn Forbes is going to put the ball on the floor and get past you? They just don't have a creator. They don't have a shot creator. So your theory sounds great if you had the right roster. So maybe if you want to blame anybody, blame the GM. Their roster configuration is a team that's set up for Giannis Antetokounmpo taking the ball to the basket and kicking out for threes. That's who they are. That's the roster that this coach was given. I have a guy, and it's much like if Ben Simmons didn't have Joel Embiid here. What are the Sixers? Whenever Joel Embiid is out, what are the Sixers? It's Ben Simmons taking the ball to the basket, everybody conversion on him, and then him kicking out. They did it with Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova, and they did it in the game that Embiid was out the last time. They used Ben Simmons. He kicks out to Curry and Green. Those guys bombs away. That's what the Bucks offense is. They don't have a low post guy. They don't have a guy to put the ball on the floor and get past you. So, if anything, the coach is saying, this is the roster I have. If I'm the coach and I tell that team with Chris Middleton and Brooke Lopez and Pat Connaughton and Bryn Forbes, hey, guys, I'm going to need you to put the ball on the floor and take it to the basket. Yeah, I'm probably going to lose by 25. The only reason they're in that game is because they shot 40% from three. You saw what happened when they tried to put the ball on the floor. Giannis is putting his shoulder down and just trying to cruise through people. I mean, Middleton can't do that. So, yeah, your theory sounds great if you had the talent to do it. They simply don't. I mean, they played, by the way, Middleton played 45 minutes last night. Giannis played 42 minutes last night. They're only playing 6 guys, really. Connaughton played 32 minutes last night off the bench. The one guy on that team that maybe can put the ball on the floor and create a little bit is Drew Holiday. But, I mean, he's – what do you think? He's James Harden getting separation on the step back? It's preposterous. 609-403-0973. I mean, I get it. We want to blame the coach. That's admirable. You don't like to blame the players. Giannis is limited. What's the coach going to do? Hey, Giannis. He put the ball on the floor. They put a wall up. Giannis had trouble getting deep into the paint late in that game. They were sagging all the way off of him. He didn't want to shoot. He doesn't want to go to the free throw line. Much of the problems that Ben Simmons has. The problem is Simmons has other alternatives. The Bucks do not. I mean, you want Giannis to sit out there and dump the ball into the post to Brooke Lopez? Is that what he should do? I mean, think before you hit the send button, dude. Come on. I mean, you took the time to do that, and I appreciate it, but you're better than that. You shoot 40% from three, and you're saying that they should do something that they just don't have the roster for. You want Chris Middleton to take the ball to the rack. Yeah, that's going to win them a championship. That's how they're going to beat the Nets. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. When we come back, Paul Hudrick joins me inside the Sixers as the keys for tonight. We've got them for you. As Paul Hudrick, our 97.3 ESPN Sixers insider, joins me for our Inside the Sixers segment. This is a must-win, I would say, for the Sixers. And I don't usually use that often. But if they lose this game, I'm not sure they win this series. I hope I'm wrong. But I had the Sixers at 6. I'll stick with that. I think they win tonight. They go back to Atlanta Friday night. Take care of biz. We'll ask Paul Hudrick. Coming up next, here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online, eastcoastroofing.com. All right, 20 after 3. We saw a wild day in the NBA. We're going to take a look at it, plus Sixers Hawks tonight. You can hear the game on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com. He will be in the building tonight for Sixers and Hawks. Game number 5, pivotal game 5. I'll even ask Paul, is it a must-win number 5? Can they win 2 in a row? Can they win in Atlanta and then get a game 7? Or do they have to have the game tonight, Paul? What say you?
I don't know about must win, but they should and they better. I'll put it that way because they're at home. We've talked many times about how good they are at home. Obviously, game 1 didn't go as planned. But in general, this has been a really, really good home team. And it's hard to fathom them losing 2 home games in one series to a team that, quite frankly, to me, they are better than. They are better than the Atlanta Hawks. That hasn't happened through 4 games. They haven't been the better team each night. But I think overall they are the better team. So must win, I don't know about must win because I do think they could theoretically win in Atlanta. They've already won in Atlanta once and then come back home and win a game 7. But to me, I think they should and they better win tonight.
My biggest concern tonight, all right, is, look, I said the Hawks, they have to shoot above their 3-point average. Like whatever they shoot for the year, I think it's like 36. They need to shoot above and beyond that like they did in game 1. They hit 23s. They didn't do that in game 4, and they still won the game. I think they still have another night in them where they're going to bombs away and hit. I mean, they are not shooting the ball well. Do they have that night in them? And if they do, they steal a game like this. That gets a little interesting. But what is your biggest concern in a game like tonight?
It still has to be Joel Embiid for me. I'm still, I think he bounces back. I believe that, but at the same time, I'm not 100% confident that his knee is going to allow him to do that. I think mentally he's going to be fired up. He's going to want to put that game behind him and kind of, we all kind of saw Clint Capella's comments, which from what I understand, Capella didn't mean them in, to be disrespectful or trash talk, but I'm sure Joel Embiid saw them and I'm still sure he had some thoughts about it. So, but that's my concern. I mean, listen, they weren't good in the second half. There's no way to slice it. Offensively, they were a disaster. There was no movement. Doc talked about it, them playing hero ball. But the issue is they've gotten away with that from time to time this season because they have Joel Embiid. He went 0 for 12. How many nights is he going to go 0 for 12 in an entire half? I mean, that's, dating back in the NBA history, it hasn't happened that often to players. I think he's only like the second guy ever on that many field goal attempts to not make a single one. So he is my biggest concern because I think as long as he can give them, he's never going to be 100%. He's not going to be the Joel Embiid we watched all season long. But if he could be the guy he was games 1, 2, and 3, I don't think the Hawks can beat him again.
Yeah, I think the Embiid thing will be obviously something to watch here. Now, I had mentioned, he left game 4 against Washington, and the Sixers looked discombobulated. Then game 5, they didn't have him. They game plan for that. Boom. Do they have a situation where he was not himself, but he was still out there, and they went with him? Now they know maybe his limitations, and they kind of game plan around that, or everything back through Joel tonight?
It's tough. I still think you go through Joel, at least to start the game because that's your guy. That's if you're going to go down with your best. Go down with your best player. Go down with your best offense, and your best offense is Joel Embiid, being Joel Embiid. So I think to start the game, you still kind of have to ride out with Joel. To your point, though, Mike, I think it's fair that if he's not feeling great, or if it seems that he doesn't have it. Yeah, you have to figure some other things out, whether that's using Joel Moore as maybe a decoy on certain possessions, maybe giving possessions off, whether it's Tobias Harris becoming more of a focal point as a scorer, whether it's Ben Simmons becoming more aggressive as a scorer, whatever it is, or Seth Curry even, getting him in some more actions, getting him in some pick and rolls, some dribble handoffs, whatever it is. I think Doc's going to have a feel for that early on, whether Joel has it or not. Because to me, I know a lot of people were upset. They said, well, why does he keep going through Joel? Well, I kind of get it because it's Joel Embiid, and he's been Superman through the first 3 games of the series, playing on a torn meniscus. And game 3 was the first time where he kind of showed a chink, or excuse me, game 4 was the first time where he showed a chink in the armor. So, I still think you go through him for as long as you can, but if he doesn't look like he has it, Doc's going to have to pivot in a hurry, I think.
By the way, Sixers a 7-point favorite in the game tonight. Moneyline's minus 300, kind of telling that at least Vegas thinks that Joel Embiid could be back or that somebody's ticked off or something different's going to happen. That's a pretty big number in this one. That's an interesting point, too, because I had Jimmy Lynam on yesterday and kind of asked him about that. Like, hey, when you have your guy, and even if he's struggling, you don't go away from him. You ride him, and you anticipate, hey, even if he's 0 for 11, I know one's coming. So you stick with Joel Embiid in that spot. Now, tonight, it's going to be interesting to see what Ben Simmons comes out early. Is he the guy who got the message? And you mentioned, hey, he at least acknowledged he need to be more aggressive. We've had these patterns where he acknowledges it, then he comes out, he gets those couple layups. So I think that will be a very interesting and telling part of this game is which version of Ben Simmons do we get early?
First of all, Coach Lynam is my guy. I love Coach Lynam. But yeah, with Ben, there is just it's all players. I feel like kind of have to go through it. I shouldn't say all players. A lot of players have to go through it where, if they're not a natural scorer, and we've discussed so many times how he is just not. That's not his game. He's not a natural scorer. Recognizing that sometimes, he wants to do the best play. He wants to make the best play for the team. And sometimes he does not realize or he does not think that the best play for his team is for him to score. And I think he is figuring out that balance of when and when not to. Clearly, game 3, second half, in that third quarter, he took the damn game over. He was phenomenal. And they needed him to be because of everything going on. To your point, Mike, now, knowing that Joel Embiid is struggling with that need, knowing what's going on, knowing how poorly they played in that second half, do we see perhaps a more aggressive version? Perhaps. I thought he was actually the first half. I thought he was pretty darn good. I thought he was pretty aggressive. On both ends of the floor, I thought he was very good. And in the second half, I thought, it's a chicken or the egg thing. Were they bad because he wasn't aggressive, or was he aggressive because wasn't aggressive because they were bad? Because the whole offense stunk. Tobias Harris wasn't very good in the second half. Seth Curry, who had a really good first half, wasn't very good. Nobody offensively played well in the second half. They shot 32% as a team. That's not one guy. That's a team all playing poorly. But yeah, could Ben Simmons being more aggressive, pushing the pace a little bit more, could that, maybe have helped? Maybe. And they need him to do that in game 5 tonight. Yeah, I think it's very possible that with Joel Embiid's condition, not knowing what you're going to get out of him, it might be better for Ben Simmons to really push the pace and look to be more aggressive and look to score more.
What'd you think of what Doc said yesterday? He said, Ben says he needs to be more aggressive. I can't disagree with that more.
Yeah, I still kind of wonder what the difference is between what Doc Rivers says to us and what Doc Rivers says to Ben Simmons, because it's not the same thing. And also I'm curious what Sam Cassell says behind closed doors, because Sam Cassell is obviously in Ben Simmons' ear, and obviously Ben Simmons listens to Sam Cassell. So I'm not 100% sure that even Doc believes that. Like, I don't know that for a fact, but I just think that Doc's good at saying what guys need to hear. And I think sometimes with Ben is a guy, like, maybe people in Philadelphia don't want to believe this, but I think Ben Simmons is a guy who puts a lot of pressure on himself. And so I think, Doc doesn't want him to press any more than he already does. He already, wants to be great and cares and wants the team to win. So he doesn't want to put in Ben's head, hey, I need to score. He doesn't really want Ben thinking that way, at least to us. So then, you know what I mean? I think it's a different message he's sending, I believe, between what he tells us and what he tells Ben.
The people who feel like, why do they baby him so much? Why do they protect him so much? Brett Brown did come out at times and say, I need more. I want him to shoot. That didn't seem to work. I don't know that this is Doc saying I'm taking a different approach, but I don't know. Would they be better served at, being a little tougher on him?
But again, that goes back to what is he telling Ben at practice? Does it do him any good does it do Doc Rivers any good to come to us and say, hey, Ben Simmons stunk last night? Is that going to help Ben Simmons? Probably not. Or even just say like, oh, I needed Ben Simmons to score. Like, I don't know if those conversations with the media, like, I think for some guys that works. I think some guys get wind of it. It fires them up. It works for them. I'm not sure that Ben Simmons is one of those guys. I think Ben Simmons is a guy that he prefers a coach to be on his butt and to, deliver the personal message to him. I don't think he's because what you talked about, Mike, when I remember Ben Simmons last year, when Brett Brown said, hey, I need him to take a three or whatever, and that became a whole thing. From what I understand,
tell everybody.
Right. From what I understand, that didn't, that rubbed Ben the wrong way a little bit. And I don't think that's babying him. I think that's just understanding what makes a guy tick, what works for a certain guy. And I don't think that the media bashing works for Ben Simmons. I think what works for Ben Simmons is one-on-one in his face, telling him what you need from him. I don't think the media thing is the route to go with him.
Okay, so if you had a sit down with Ben Simmons and we're carte blanche able to ask him anything, what is your opening question?
What the hell is going on with your free throws? That would be my first question, because I can't make sense of it. I don't know. Yes, clearly he is a poor free throw shooter. He's been a poor free throw shooter since he got into the league. But he's, poor free throw shooter at 60%. Right now he's below 35%. I mean, I'm just curious, did he change something? Is it in his head? What is it? I mean, we've asked him about it, and he doesn't really. I mean, maybe he doesn't know, because he said, he was asked, "What do you need to do?" And he goes, "I need to go to the line. I need to hit him." And you see him warm up, and
answer.
You see him warm up, and he looks fine. I mean, it looks like it has all season long, and yeah.
My first question is, we all watch you shoot 3 after 3 after 3 after 3 and make them in practices and before games. You don't attempt any. So why are you consistently working on that shot if you have no intention of using it? Now you're wasting getting better at an area you might be utilized. It's almost like, hey, if you're going to keep shooting them, why? Now you're wasting time at getting better at something else.
I would disagree with that, in the sense that I think it's building towards him wanting to be. I don't think he is comfortable taking them in a game situation yet, because he doesn't think he's good enough at it. Now, you and I have talked about it. He might be good enough at it, and he's just not taking it. That's a different conversation. But I think in his head, he doesn't think he can hit them consistently enough to help the team. So I think he's practicing them because he wants to get better at it. And yeah, it might not, I shouldn't say might not. It's not going to happen for the rest of this playoff run that he's going to start taking threes. But I think it's him thinking towards the future and him thinking about how he can make his game better. And also, I would add this: there hasn't really been a moment for me where I've watched in either of these first two series with him with the ball in the perimeter wide open, and I'm like, why didn't you take that three? You're wide, because even sometimes, I'm not one of these people that's obsessed with him taking a three, but there's certainly been times during the season where I thought, maybe you should have just pulled the trigger there. You had a little bit of an opening. I haven't really seen that through either of these games, any of these games so far. So
but I feel like it just where he positions himself in the court doesn't allow that. There are times where he's down on that block and he's in that dunker spot, but if he just kind of stretched himself out to the corner so someone else can take the ball to the basket if he's out of the way, and then they can kick to him. We're not asking you to shoot 8, 9 of them. I mean, Giannis doesn't shoot it well either, but he made 2 out of 4 last night. And I mean, he doesn't want to.
And they lost.
I know, but they want him to shoot it. That's all. Hey, I said Blake Griffin's defending him in the paint last night, and he's just bulldozing through him to try to get to the basket. But, that corner three, start there. I don't know. I mean, that's not going to happen. We know that. But I would certainly think that you're going to see a different version, or you would need a different version of him tonight, especially if you don't get Joel Embiid. All right, flip it around. Young didn't shoot well, but I thought he controlled the whole game. He controlled the flow and the pace of that game. He had freaking 18 assists. I mean, he was unbelievable. So, do they have to figure out a new way to defend him?
I would say no. Listen, I mean, the only thing that bothered me defensively about that game is the lack of turnovers. I think Atlanta only turned it over 3 or 4 times or something like that. That's the biggest thing that bothered me. But they shot 36%. If you have an opponent shooting 36%, you need to win that game. There's no reason for it. And I do think a lot of it goes back to what Doc said. I thought John Collins, that was by far, that might have been his best game of the playoffs. He was really active on both ends, and they didn't box him out. They didn't get a body on him. And I just thought he was the hungriest player on the floor. And I think that's the bigger issue. I don't think – and I think the defensive lapses, the missed shots that the Hawks got, the open looks that they got that they missed, to me it was a product of the Sixers maybe being a little lackadaisical. I don't think it was anything strategic. I don't think it was anything matchup-wise. I think Ben Simmons is the right guy to defend him. I think the schemes they've used, the looks they've given him, the coverages they've given him, I think have been appropriate. I just think it's a matter of they need to be better. They need to be more locked in. They need to be better defensively. And that's all it boils down to for me with Trae Young. I thought they did an excellent job in games 2 and 3, and even game 4 for the yes, he had 18 assists, but again, I don't know if I wouldn't know if I agree with him that he controlled the game, but yeah, I mean he clearly, especially down the stretch, was huge for them down the stretch. But I wouldn't change anything. I think it's just a matter of them showing a little bit more intensity to him and overall on defense.
You think Trae Young could be the best player on the best team that wins the team that wins a title?
It's hard to say. I mean, he would need to be surrounded by some really good defenders. I would say that first and foremost, because they're going to have to make up for his defense. I think maybe next year it might be a little bit trickier for him, where if the league, frowns upon some of those fouls he draws, when he's leaning away for opponents, those unnatural shots. I'm curious to see how much that would hurt a guy like him who does so well doing that, and it's a big part of his game. But no, I mean, I think because he's so good offensively and he's still so young, I would say he could potentially be the best player on a team that wins a championship for sure.
The version of the Nets that we saw last night, even as well as Durant played, that was one of the most epic performances. The game plan was malpractice. However, he exploited what they did. Can that version of the Nets get to the finals?
It's going to be tough. Harden really looked, I mean, the guy, give him credit, he gutted through it. He clearly did not feel great, short on so many of those jumpers. I mean, and it's a combination. And like, Mike, when you're talking about a hamstring, that's the only cure is rest. And if you're resting, you're not playing basketball. So it's a combination last night of he's got some rust and he's just dealing with that injury. So credit to him for gutting it out, but he just wasn't James Harden last night at all. Can they rely on Kevin Durant having to score 49 points and dish out 10 assists and Jeff Green hitting 6 or 7 threes? No, I don't think that's sustainable. And I just, when you look at a team like Phoenix, if they had to go up against Phoenix, if the Nets were to get that far and they had to take on a team like Phoenix looking like they did last night, no, I don't think they could beat the Phoenix Suns looking like that. They need James Harden to be a little bit healthier and better, and I think they're going to need Kyrie Irving, because I don't think they'll have quite enough. As great as Kevin Durant is and has unbelievable as he was last night, asking him to do that, 4 games in a series that's a huge ask.
This East is wide open right now. I mean, if the Sixers don't end up winning this series, it would be an epic failure with what's going on around them. No Kawhi, possibly no Chris Paul. I mean, this NBA is as wide open as I think we've ever remembered it.
100%. There's no Warriors, there's no Spurs. LeBron is out. It's crazy, and it stinks. I mean, quite frankly, part of the reason is injuries. The Lakers clearly couldn't be Anthony Davis gets hurt, then LeBron's still banged up. What's going on now with the Suns? Chris Paul is going to possibly miss the first game or two of the Western Conference Finals. The Jazz, even Donovan Mitchell missed a game to start the playoffs. You see Kawhi now out, and I saw someone point this out too. Like it almost seemed like maybe it's at one point Kawhi and KD might have been on this collision to play each other, which would have been really entertaining, because we haven't really gotten an opportunity to see those two guys at their peaks. Kawhi as the elite defender, Kevin Durant is arguably the greatest scorer to ever play basketball, and we haven't really got the chance to see them kind of go head to head in a playoff series. So. It's just we're all getting cheated, quite frankly. It stinks that all these injuries are happening and we're not getting to see these teams at full strength. I didn't even mention obviously the Sixers with Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid's having this unreal season, and was looking like he was going to just steamroll through the playoffs, and then he tears his meniscus. So it's just one thing after another. And like I said, I think we're the fans of the game, we're all kind of getting cheated because we're not getting to see the best product possible.
I would imagine the NBA is not hoping for a Jazz Bucks finals here.
No, I would imagine not. And you saw today, the league, LeBron James is not thrilled. And whether you agree with LeBron James or not, we all listen when he speaks. And he was clearly not thrilled the way this season was laid out. And I think he's got some fair points. And now I'm curious, they said that they plan on starting next season normal time. It started around October, but I don't know if that's viable, and I think maybe they should rethink that.
Yeah, I don't. I don't see why they just don't do it. They push it back. I don't see why they don't just keep doing this. Keep it where you're starting in December, playing these. Take yourself right up to training camp. You can own the whole summer and just switch it to that. You don't have to go as deep as Christmas. Just start sometime in mid-December in there. And finish sometime like the first week of late July, early August, something like that.
Right. And 72 games, I think, is fair too. I mean, I don't think they need to go back to 82, although I think they will for revenue purposes. But I think 72 games is just fine.
Well, they can get around the revenue thing if they don't play 82. I know that takes 5 home games away, I guess, from teams, but having some sort of mid-season tournament that they're talking about, that kind of stuff. So there's ways. All right, Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Tonight, he will be in the building for Sixers and the Hawks. You can get all the coverage on our website, 973ESPN.com. All right, Paul, we'll talk to you, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks, man.
And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Coming up, good stuff from Paul, by the way. He's always really insightful, been around the Sixers for a while. Who are the top senior Cape Atlantic League athletes this year? The seasons are winding down. It was a wild year with kind of a wonky football season, kind of a half basketball season, and the baseball season is the first one that got back. You'll meet 2 of the best athletes over their 4-year careers that are coming to an end, and you'll meet them coming up next. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. Our 8 South Jersey counties, all over Delaware as well. And, of course, the Sixers tonight on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have the game for you live. Right now, we're going to tell you the Billy Shoppy Memorial Award winners, who are the top senior athletes, both male and female, in the Cape Atlantic League for their 4 years of athletic service for their teams. We will announce the winners here in just 1 second here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, great winners over the years like Mike Trout, and you've heard some big names over the years on our show. Last year, it was a kind of a wonky season. It kind of led to the beginning of a wonky season this year. But first up, we want to congratulate Katie Herlahy from Middle Township. She is the winner on the girls' side this year, and we're going to bring her on board so you guys can meet Katie, who has had a tremendous – somebody told me the other day, Katie, they said that she might be the best female athlete ever in this area. And I said, well, that's something right there. But you finished your high school career June 4th in Group 2 lacrosse quarterfinals, 55 goals, 102 goals in field hockey, 1,200 points in basketball, and you are the third Middle Township Panther girl to win the award in the last 5 years. So that school has a lineage of doing this. So congratulations to you, Katie.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
That's awesome. And all right, so obviously you are heading to play basketball at Rowan. So let's start with that. What stood out, basketball over the others? Because I know when you are a three-sporter, sometimes it's tough to pick which one. What stands out about why you want to continue playing basketball?
Well, yeah, like you said, I've always played field hockey, basketball, and lacrosse. And it was honestly really hard and stressful because I love all of them, but especially field hockey and basketball. But I think, I don't know, I've always just really loved basketball since like third grade. It's always been something that I've been super like passionate about, and I've met so many like awesome people playing and being coached by some great people, and I just want to keep on doing that.
Well, obviously, as your individual achievements were phenomenal, what were some of the, team memories that kind of stand out for you when you look back? Because it's crazy. It's over. 4 years go by, and I know last year was a little wonky with the COVID situation. So getting that chance to finish out as a senior, what are some of the things that you kind of will quickly look back to and say, man, I can't believe those are all things that are already done?
Oh, well, with like summer coming up, we would have probably already started field hockey practices, like summer practices. So those for sure. I can't believe I don't have to get up at 6 a.m. anymore for those practices. Yeah, just practices. And obviously my best memories have been like championship games, even the ones we lost, like just the excitement of having them, and practices, just like hanging out with all my friends, laughing with them. It was always so fun, and it's just crazy that it's done. It
is crazy, and obviously the basketball season this year was, there was something. It wasn't what you guys wanted, and you guys, you still were a 4-time All-Star, 3-time in field hockey, and a lacrosse All-Star as well. A true 3-sport athlete at the highest level for all three. She is heading to Rowan to play. Katie, great job. Congratulations. You are the Billy Shoppy Memorial Award winner as the top female athlete this season. So congratulations to you and good luck in college.
Thank you so much.
Katie, great to talk to you. All right, now let's go over to the boys' side of things. And Gannon Brady from Ocean City. Now, my man led the Cape Atlantic League in scoring the last 2 years, 2-time scoring leader. He also pitched on Saturday as he led Ocean City to the Group 3 semifinals, beating Mainland. And he will pitch Saturday night in the state Group 3 championship. And I know Gannon pretty well because Gannon, my man, has pitched in almost every single big game from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and however old you are now, my man. But I would imagine, Gannon, that this game on Saturday night, of all the big games you have pitched in, might be the clincher. This might be the biggest one for you?
Yeah, I think this one definitely takes the cake. I mean, when I was 12, we came up a little short for the state finals for Little League. But for high school to even be on a bigger stage, it's going to be a good atmosphere, and I'm just I'm just excited to get out there.
Now, the numbers are just unbelievable in the playoffs. 0.50 ERA, 22 strikeouts, just 3 hits in 14 innings. Overall this year, 5-3, 196, 77 strikeouts. But what's bigger, the pitching numbers or your 2-time scoring championship in basketball?
I mean, I don't really want to pick between the two because I'm proud of both. But I was just glad to be able to have a senior year because I wasn't really expecting much with COVID and everything. But we had a really successful year for basketball, and we just want to finish it off strong this year with the state championship, and that's what we're going to try to do on Saturday night.
Now, Gannon, it's obviously pretty cool that Saturday a week ago you got a chance to play Mainland. You guys know each other so well. Is that one of the more memorable high school events? I mean, I was there. I got to call the game. It was really cool, but the amount of people that were there for a baseball game, it's something that I've never seen in all the time covering high school baseball in this area.
Yeah, I try not the crowd too much during the game, but after I saw that there's like a huge amount of people there, but it was definitely a great environment to play in. I mean, I've been close to a lot of the kids on the other team for a while, and I've obviously been playing with a lot of kids on our team since at least freshman year, and it was great to put a nice cherry on top of South Jersey, and well, we're definitely excited to get out on Saturday to even finish that.
Yeah, that will be Saturday night in the Group State 3 championship game. Now, Ocean City has never won a state baseball championship. This will be their first opportunity. They tapped on the shoulder. And how neat is that, Gannon? Because obviously your rotation has 4 Division I options. I know Tommy threw the other day, but it seems that when the biggest of big moments, they always kind of tap on your shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a great rotation all year. Matt Noonan's pitching a ton of big games this year. Duke's come on strong, and here at the end of the year, Tommy's pitching a lot of good games. But no matter who's pitching, we always have confidence in who we throw, and we just know we only have to get a few runs across the plate to have a chance to win. And we've been very thankful to have such a great pitching staff this year.
Now, you will play baseball at Fordham, so congratulations to you. What was it about Fordham that kind of stood out?
Just being able to play in such a big city. I'll be majoring in finance, so there'll be a lot of opportunities to come after that. But they have a really good baseball team. They won the Atlantic 10 the year before I committed, so that was a big selling point there. And I really like the coaching staff, and it seems like a good environment, pretty similar to Ocean City. It's a lot of pitching and defense, so hopefully I can contribute to that environment and hopefully do some of the same things.
Will you miss the basketball aspect of it, man?
Yeah, I definitely will. I'll get to all the games as much as I can, but yeah, it'll definitely be a little weird next winter because that'll be the first time I won't be playing basketball in the winter, so there'll be some time to adjust to that, but I'll definitely be a big fan of the Fordham basketball team.
All right, Gannon Brady, it was, number one, a pleasure to get a chance to coach you when you were 13 years old, and he was the guy that we tapped on all the big games then as well. He went to a World Series as a 14-year-old. They used him in all the big games there, and he will pitch the big game again on Saturday. Gannon Brady, the Billy Shoppy Award winner. He is the top senior athlete in South Jersey. Gannon, good luck, man, and congratulations.
All right, thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely, bud. There's Gannon Brady from Ocean City. He is a 2-time basketball scoring leader. He averaged 21 points a game in 2020, 28 points a game this year. He led South Jersey in scoring in 2021 and set a new school record for points per game in a season, and is a 2-time All-Star in basketball. And, of course, he is pitching the biggest game that Ocean City's program will play in. They have never won a state baseball championship. He will pitch that game on Saturday night. Gannon Brady, Katie Herlihy, Middle Township, Ocean City. A couple Cape May Countyers there. Congratulations to them. They are the Billy Shoppy Award winners for 2021's high school season. When we come back, it is football at 4, and Jeff Mosher's here. We got a lot of stuff you don't want to miss from this week's edition of Inside the Birds. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. You can get the latest edition from Monday. It is out right now. Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, of course, bringing you that. This hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. I will say this, I was just reading this, Mosher. LeBron James was saying that he told everybody that they shouldn't have played, that the so many injuries that are going on right now. And, in the football world, they're the only one that got to play their season, right? They got to play normal time frame. They didn't have to try. And you're seeing injuries all over the place. Baseball's having so many injuries. Basketball is having so many injuries. On the football side of things, man, they really, really lucked out by the fact that they didn't have to move anything. They didn't have to delay anything or start anything weird. That's the one sport that is seemingly still on the same track and path, where the other ones are all trying to kind of play catch up, and they're hurting for it.
Yeah, I remember last year when we were speaking at this time, and we would always have to talk in generalities about, I don't know what's going to happen. And we kept saying that. But the one thing that myself and Adam, just knew from talking to people in the league is that the NFL was hell-bent on having a season and having it be as normal as possible, despite whatever obstacles that COVID presented. And it presented a lot. If you go back to I guess it was October or early November, the Broncos had a practice squad wide receiver start at quarterback, right? Because all three of their quarterbacks were on the COVID list. So it didn't matter to the NFL, though. I mean, listen, they don't want that going forward. And clearly you see these restrictions that are loosened, but yet ones that remain the same now are intended to get players all on the same page with vaccinations. But the NFL was always determined to quote unquote secure that bag, play on those primetime games, get that money, get that advertising rev.
There's no question about it. And for the most part, they did. I mean, there was a handful of games. You had a Thursday night game or a Wednesday night game. And other than that, but man, you're seeing what's going on. And I will say LeBron is saying hey, I don't know what he wanted them to do. I guess they could have moved it back to January or February, but at what point do they get the thing back on track? That's where football is. They've got to be counting their blessings that they didn't have to push and squeeze and try to condense, that they are still on the same track. And I guess I saw today they're going to start to let the reporters back for in-person interviews.
They are. They're gonna let vaccinated reporters in for interviews. Yes. So I'm vaccinated. I'm a reporter. I look forward to being able to kind of do some things with the team that doesn't involve Zoom. So not that, hey, look, the Zoom was the best alternative, or whatever you want to call it, the teams. Whatever they set up was the best alternative that we could have dealt with. But it is time now, and I'm happy to see the NFL is doing that. And I hope that all sports start to go back toward that direction where we have now, if people, leagues, media reps want to have discussions about some of the issues that have come up lately, with I can't remember the woman's name who the tennis player who pulled out of the tournament. Osaka, is that her name? Yeah. If they want to have discussions about, the media climate and what's too much and what's not enough and what's mandatory and what's not, I'm sure, people who are in higher places than I in the media will be happy to have those discussions. But I do think it's time to, for those who are vaccinated to be able to get back to that.
Yep, and you're seeing it around sports. That's a good step. In football, again, they played their season last year, and now they have the next season coming up. Now, let's get into a couple of things here. On the latest edition of Q&A with Jason Avant and Quentin Michael, I thought those guys had a really interesting discussion about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, where a lot of people are ready to give up on him and almost think that, he's not going to make the team. What did those guys have to say about the former second-round pick that makes you think that, hey, maybe this guy could be salvaged?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I would use the expression damning someone with faint praise a little bit to describe Jason Avant, who was an assistant wide receivers coach last year under Aaron Moorhead and worked with these wide receivers. And he basically said he felt that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside could probably, theoretically, perform to a higher level if moved into the slot, because he just doesn't have the fluidity and that natural hip movement to route up cornerbacks on the outside. But if you put him on the inside, he has enough of, and this is where you see tight ends and slot receivers distinguish themselves, enough of those subtle moves that even Jason was himself great at as a slot receiver for the Eagles, whether it's head fakes or jab moves. And he noted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's basketball background, where you have a lot of similar head fakes and stutter steps and things like that, where you can use to get a step on a defender, whereas it's not just your athleticism and your deep speed, it's your understanding of the nuances of the game. So he felt that Arcega-Whiteside could probably be a more productive receiver if given that opportunity and put there. And I do remember last year in camp, they did look at J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as a slot receiver. But, the reality is that doesn't mean that Jason or the Eagles or anybody else thinks that he's going to win a roster spot or even put him in the slot. It's still going to be better than what you might get from Greg Ward or Jalen Reagor from the slot. Because remember, these guys are going to move around a lot. And because JJ is not someone I see all of a sudden becoming a great special teams player, and you never know, and you're competing for a backup spot or a fourth or a fifth guy maybe. I mean, he'll be in the mix, but I don't know that all of a sudden the move to the slot puts him back up the totem pole at all.
Yeah, I find that a kind of an interesting conversation because I had brought up before is, the Eagles had a guy in Nelson Aguilar who his rookie year was useless essentially, and then they moved him in the slot in 2017, and he really became an impactful player for them. I mean, I thought he was a big part of their offense in 2017, and then the next year they had to keep moving him. Like he would be the slot, and then someone would get hurt, and they had to put him on the outside, and it just seemed like he was like the Vince Velasquez of the wide receiving core there. They were yo-yoing him all over the place. It's like, hey, if you can. Maybe JJ is similar where, hey, we tried you on the outside, didn't work. Let's focus with you on the slot, and maybe we can salvage you a little bit.
Yeah, I think the concept of what you're speaking of as far as moving somebody and giving them a fresh start like Nelson Aguilar did, and then maybe in a position where the ball's a little closer to you as opposed to all the way down the field is probably a little comparable. I would say, though, that Nelson does have the hip fluidity and the natural movement of an outside wide receiver that J.J. Arcega does not have. That's what made Nelson a very good vertical slot option for the Eagles. One guy I thought might be a good comp, and I even asked Jason about it during the show, was maybe Jordan Matthews for J.J. Arcega, as far as a guy who's bigger, stronger body type and can kind of muscle guys and catch crossing routes underneath zones and sit down there. And Jason was like, I could kind of see that too. But he even felt that Arcega-Whiteside is probably something a little bit better athletically than Jordan Matthews, but still not somebody like Nelson Aguilar with the smooth, fluid hips. So somewhere in between. And I know Quentin Michael brought up Marquez Colston, which is kind of funny because Colston was like an amazing wide receiver. I mean, he had, I don't know how many yards he finished his career with, but he was probably 8,000 or 9,000 yard seasons. Although I don't think he ever made an all-pro, or he may not have made too many Pro Bowls, but that's what Quentin Michael kind of drew from what Jason was saying. And maybe there's something to that.
When he was drafted, Moshe, he was kind of going to be the replacement for Alshon Jeffrey, that he would do a lot of the things that Alshon did. Not fast, point of attack, catch radius. Is that thought process maybe out the door now for this new coaching staff?
Yeah, because Alshon had just or maybe still a little bit, had a really unique ability to be able to separate downfield Mike, not just using his body. I mean, he was good at high pointing. He was good at back shoulders, but he had just a strange, deceptive twitch about him that would really start to kick in 10 to 15 yards down the field, more so in Chicago than with Philadelphia, I would say. I think the injury started to take a toll on that ability, but so far we've only seen very small opportunities or limited times when we've seen J.J. Arcega-Whiteside be able to make a catch down the field where he did have some separation. But Alshon was a legit separator in his own unique way, and that's not something J.J. Arcega has mastered.
No, he hasn't mastered anything, and I guess the question will be in training camp when we get to that point is he in competition for playing time or just a roster spot? I guess that's really next is, do we just keep him on the roster, or is he in legit competition to get snaps?
Yeah, I mean, he is certainly in the competition because of the lack of great options. I mean, right now you look at the team and you say two guys who are undoubtedly no doubt about it, locks to make the team are Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor. I would throw Travis Fulgham almost in there because he's going to get a shot to see if they can't bring back what happened last year.
So does JJ battle with the slot guy, or is it's either you or Fulgham getting these snaps?
Well, I mean, because you're talking about both being kind of natural X's, but Devontae Smith can play some X. We'll see if they think Jalen Reagor can play some X. They're going to move guys around, but I think in general, and you see this a lot, they're going to move around a ton. So Arcega-Whiteside is competing to make the team as a wide receiver. If he's good enough, they'll find multiple spots to play him in or wherever it's suited. But as far as competition goes, there's really 3 guys that I can tell you are going to be on the team. Those 2 and Travis Fulgham, unless Fulgham has the worst camp ever. And then after that, it's wide open. You've got Quez Watkins, you've got JJ Arcega-Whiteside, you have John Hightower, you have Greg Ward, of course, and then you've got the Osborne kid who was a rookie free agent.
Yep, I know one of the things I'm looking forward to when we get to training camp, which is July 26th? Is that like the universal, something like that?
I thought it was the 27th, but it could be the 26th. You might be right.
Somewhere in that range. That's like the universal training camp date, except for the teams that play in the Thursday night opener and the Hall of Fame game. So
correct.
July 27th. So we are closing in on 1 month away from training camp. I think the wide receiver thing is going to be one of the more fascinating ones. We touched a little bit on linebacker on Monday when you were on with us, that linebacker spot, how many different pieces you got there, because much like wide receiver, you have so many different guys who do different things. You don't have a bunch of guys who are similar. It's well, you do this and you do that and you can rush there and these 2 spots have a plethora of guys who are very unproven, but they all do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, this coaching staff has been very bullish and very outspoken, Mike, about not having a certain scheme that you need specific player X for. They've both Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon have come out and said, we want good players, we want multifaceted players, and it's our job to find what they do best and put them in a position to succeed. Now, does that mean they don't have a scheme? No, of course they have a scheme. Of course they have a concept of what they want to do. When you take over in your first year, you may find that you don't have the personnel to do what you want to do. So you have to tinker with your concept and tinker with your scheme until you get the personnel to do what you want to do. But I do think it's better in general, and I do feel like these guys are being honest when they are open-minded about just having really good, well-rounded players and then seeing where they can put them. Because the league is going that way. It's sort of like the NBA positionless player. Once you get past the front 4, right, and you get into your linebacker, safety, nickel, cornerback level, you're starting to see guys move all around. You're starting to see safety linebackers, slot corners, right, corner safeties and things like that. I mean, the Isaiah Simmonses of the world, the Tyrann Mathieu of the world, they're lining up all over the place.
Yeah. And you talk about the different in the secondary and how you get past the defensive line. You got ends and tackles still kind of there. The linebacker and this team on the secondary, you wonder how many guys, if you're sticking Jonathan Gannon and his staff in a room, if they're going through the defensive corners and are they saying, how many of these guys do we think are NFL caliber guys that we really like to play? Not that we might not like to have on our practice squad or give them a shot or have them in, the third or fourth. How many of them can actually play in pass? Kevon Seymour, he's a guy that wasn't he the guy they picked up he was working like a moving furniture or something?
Yeah, he was. It's funny. He just had a nice interview on with Adam on Sirius XM a while back, and Adam said he was blown away. He was working at a tire store in California, and he had both of his shoulders repaired and got his shot with the Eagles because the Eagles given everybody a shot at cornerback over the last 2 years. I mean, if you played the position, the Eagles probably looked at you. They may not have brought you in, but they probably looked at you and know who you are if you're a cornerback. And, you got to love a guy who is at a tire store right now playing for the Eagles. It reminds you of Lou Brown in Major League where he's like, manage the Indians? Get back to you. You got somebody on the line about white walls.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder, how many guys legitimately that are currently in that depth chart make team? Like, do they say make the team? Like, I feel like we're all still like, wait, we got July 27th. We're about 6 weeks away before they get out there. How many is there going to be a new corner or two that enter this mix, or is this what you're going with?
It could be what they have to go with. It just all depends.
What if Gilmore is like? Could you like he didn't show up for camp? There's some people that think he could get traded. I mean, is that somebody that makes any sense at all?
If they weren't going to pull a trigger to get Julio Jones because some of it was also financial, how are you going to fit that money under the cap? Are you going to extend it for future years? I think you have to have the same kind of trepidation about Stephon Gilmore, who's coming off an injury. By the way, you drafted Zach McPherson, so you would like to get to be able to play him, if not this year, soon. So how many years are you going to commit money to Stephon Gilmore if you trade for him? Or do you just
in the slot?
What's that?
You play McPherson in the slot.
You could. Yeah, you possibly could. But they seem to have an abundance of slot receivers right now with Josiah Scott, with Avonte Maddox, maybe some of these third and fourth. Craig James might be someone they look at the slot. They may look at some of these safeties and see them as slot corners. So I just don't see. I don't see it happen. I never slam the door on the Eagles because you never can. But I don't see that happen.
Well, I only bring that up because it just seems that like he doesn't show up, and then that typically in New England kind of leads down the road of whereas Seattle came out and they kind of absolved Adams from not showing up. Like, hey, you do not have to be here. That's not the route that New England's taking. It's like, all right, you don't want to show up, you're out.
Well, you do wonder if things change. I mean, New England doesn't have Nick Caserio there anymore. I know that this is a Bill Belichick operation, but Bill Belichick doesn't have Tom Brady there anymore, and he's coming off a pretty bad year. Not that I think he's going to totally change, but I don't know that he's going to be kicking Steph Gilmore out the door right this way. And if he does, I think he's going to want something pretty good in return.
All right, Jeff Mosher, Football at 4. Don't forget the new Football at 4 podcast with Adam Kaplan drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. with all the latest Eagles offseason stuff. We're going to be getting into training camp soon. We're going to be getting into division previews here on Football at 4. We'll take a look at all of the teams around and see all the big storylines because, man, there are so many things going on right now. I mean, we don't know what's going on. How many teams did we talk about with Andrew yesterday? I think we have 8 quarterback battles, right? Something like that.
Is it that many?
I mean, you got, I don't know. Do you believe in Washington's got a quarterback battle?
No, I don't believe that's a quarterback battle. I believe that's Ryan Fitzpatrick's job.
All right. So you got, great. So they're saying that. Washington. Okay. How about Chicago? Do you believe them?
I believe them, but I think it should be a quarterback battle. I would certainly want Justin Fields to go win that job.
Facts. All right. New Orleans.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that is
Denver.
Between who they? Oh, no, that's Bridgewater's. You don't trade to sit him on the bench. That's going to be Bridgewater's job.
You draft a guy in the first round, right? Locke and Bridgewater. So, but you would imagine that it's not 100%. I guess Houston doesn't know what.
That's one of those faux battles that they say is a battle, but just like the whole, I think Fitzpatrick and Heineke thing. But I think that when you trade for Teddy Bridgewater and pay the money, although I know Carolina had to absorb a lot of it, but you do it with the intent of starting Teddy Bridgewater.
You got Houston. They have no idea, I would imagine, what's going on with Deshaun Watson right now, or maybe they do and aren't saying anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's a battle. But if it's not him, is it the kid they drafted from Stanford? No, who'd they sign?
I forget. Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Okay.
And I don't know. Do you think? I don't think New England's. I don't think that Mac Jones starts game 1.
I don't either.
So at least there's places that have 2 quarterbacks that will always have an eye on them. How's that?
Sure, that sounds good. Some of them we won't call battles. We'll call them scrums or jockeys.
And of course, Nick Sirianni said there's a quarterback competition here. Now you got 3 guys.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's right. There's one in Philly, of course. Yes. Nick Mullins going for Joe Flacco's job.
Check out Inside the Birds tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Adam's here tomorrow, and we will start looking at the divisions next week on Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash, leading you right up to July 27th training camp. We think it's the 20. It's either the 26th, 27th, 28th, somewhere in that range is when Eagles camp will begin. So we'll lead you right up to that with the guys during Football at 4. All right, Moshe, take care, man.
All right, my friend. Have a good one.
Jeff Moshe, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, when we come back, it is a Wednesday edition of Do You Remember? And today we're looking at things that happened on June the 16th. Plus, Jason Fitz joins us in 19 minutes from now. Mitch Lawrence from Sirius XM NBA Radio at 5 o'clock. And we go back to the NFL with Jeff Kerr coming up at 5:25 tonight. I'll ask him about the quarterback battles. And don't forget, tonight on game night, it's a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg's here, and Kevin McCormick will be live at the Wells Fargo Center. You know, I was going to go to the game tonight, and I gave up my seat for McCormick. How about that, Josh? Did you know? Actually, McCormick was going. I gave it up to Hudrick. It was going to be me and McCormick, but Hudrick covers the team a lot better than I do. So I figured it would be better for us as a outlet that if Hudrick was there covering the team. Now, if McCormick was going, I would have gone instead of McCormick. I'm just kidding. They both do a great job covering the team. Our Sixers contributor, Kevin McCormick, he also contributes for Sports Illustrated, and he will be live tonight at 6:40 with a preview tonight on game night. All right, here's things that happened on this day. Do you remember? Let's find out some of the events that happened on June the 16th in sports history. Hey, here we go. Josh Jennings, my producer. There you go. You see him on the video screen.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Couple things. I did not sleep very well last night. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was awake till about 5:15. I finally fell back asleep. My alarm went off at 7:45. But I feel like I'm making it through this day pretty well. My question is, will I get through the Sixers game tonight?
Now, here's the question. Can you take a short nap during halftime?
During halftime? No. I thought you were saying between when I get home and the game. These games don't tip off to almost 7:48 most of the time.
Or could you take a pregame nap?
I might be able to try that.
Maybe set your alarm for like 7:40.
That's tough. By the way, you see the Phillies tonight are going to do something they haven't done since 1992.
The red uniform.
I like the red.
I'm cool with that.
I do not like the white with the red pinstripes. I'm not a fan of pinstripes, but I like the red. I like the red spring training jersey they wear, and that's what they're going with.
I think it's a good look.
I like
to see more of it. I like to see it at
You're
home,
going to see more of it, I think.
I like to see it at home, though, not on the road.
Apparently, Bryce Harper requested it.
Oh, well, if Bryce Harper says you got to do it.
Do it. All right, June 16th. Here we go. Brian Piccolo, Brian's song, died of testicular cancer, New York City. The Bears running back and his friendship with Gail Sayers is immortalized in that movie, Brian's song. Is that on your list?
A list of favorite sports movies? No.
Yeah. Not a fan of Brian's song?
It's a heartwarming story.
Tearjerker, man.
It's more Billy Schweim's territory than mine.
1975, the Bucks trade Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to the Lakers for 4 players. I mean, he was just on the jump today talking about why he decided to, make the request to be traded there. Well, because he went to the Lakers, by the way. He turned it to go from Milwaukee. That's the last time they won a championship. And he was just asked, can this Bucks team win a championship? And he said, no, they cannot.
And Kareem, people forget that he's talked about this in the past, about how the world was different back then. Milwaukee was just not a good place for him where he was at in life. He was used to Los Angeles. Remember, he's a New Yorker. And he went to Los Angeles to go to college. He got drafted by Milwaukee. It was a different world for him back then. He wanted to get back to a place that he was comfortable with.
Yeah.
So,
well, he won a title for the Bucks.
He did. They gave him something.
Yeah.
He's a Kawhi.
He didn't leave him empty-handed.
Yeah, he's a Kawhi.
Yeah. Although he only played Toronto 1 year. How do you leave Toronto? What a cool place. I guess if you're going to L.A., but I'm not a big fan of L.A.
Well, he's from Southern California.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
I love L.A. I didn't love it there. That dirty, dumpy.
Jeez.
It's not the cleanest town. I mean,
you and Kareem should hang out with your bold opinions over here.
It's 1978. Reds pitcher Tom Seaver throws a no-hitter in a win over the Cardinals. It was the only no-hitter in Tom Seaver's career. Tom, terrific.
The franchise, Tom Seaver.
When I was getting growing up, I remember Tom Seaver as a Red.
Yeah, I feel like there's a whole group of a generation of people who, unless they know baseball history, the first thing they saw Tom Seaver is in the Cincinnati uniform. And people forget that Tom Seaver, his legend started in New York because of the fact that they won the World Series. He was just this dominant ace starter. Guys like him, Nolan Ryan in the 70s, Jim Palmer, they were like the powerhouse pitchers.
A couple Michael Jordans for you here. 93, Jordan scores 55. He leads the Bulls in Game 4 over the Suns in the NBA Finals. He's the 5th player to score 50 in the Finals, the first time since Jerry West did it in 1969. Since Jordan's historic night, only LeBron James has hit 50 points in an NBA Finals game. That was in 2018 with Cleveland. Jordan, 55.
If you could pick a player who's on the young side of the NBA spectrum, like under 30, who is the next guy who could score 50 in a game in an NBA Finals?
Booker. I mean, Durant, but
he's not under 30.
He doesn't qualify. Trae Young.
Okay.
If he gets to the finals, I mean, that team, he could have one of those nights, I guess. Maybe Donovan Mitchell.
I can see that. I think Booker was the best answer you gave, definitely.
He would be the first guy that comes to mind because he scored 50 before.
Well, also, he's got that ability. You mentioned earlier, Mike, when he goes on a hot streak, he's just in fuego.
1996, Jordan scores 22 points, 7 assists. Rodman, 19 rebounds. The Bulls beat the Sonics 87-75 at the United Center to win the NBA Finals in 6 games. Jordan wins his 4th NBA title. This is the first after his dad was murdered in 1993 on Father's Day.
Yeah, and some people feel like that Supersonics team, if they would have played in the NBA Finals against anybody else, they would have won a championship.
Yep.
Teams like
Think
them.
about the scoring in those games, 87-75.
Well, that was the Bucks-Nets game a couple of games ago.
NBA Finals game. Jeez.
Wild.
2002, the U.S. Open men's golf, Beth Page Black. Remember that? 2002, that was a very controversial course. It was so challenging. Tiger Woods wins his 2nd Open, 3 shots ahead of Phil Mickelson.
Yeah, that course was a mess.
That's Beth Page Black. Yeah, that was very, very, very challenging. Now, the other day, they had the interview. It was Phil and Brady are going up, not against Tiger, but it's Aaron Rodgers and Bryce DeChambeau. So TNT lands the interview with Brady and Rodgers. I didn't get to hear it. Like, what were they asking? Did they tell them, hey, don't ask me about this?
No, but Brady brought up the fact that Aaron Rodgers will like the fact that he will actually have a chance to go for it.
Gotcha.
He'll actually have that choice.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers wore a shirt that says, I'm offended.
I'm offended. Yeah. What's he, like Donovan Mitchell now? I'm a rookie, or what did he wear?
Something like I'm a rookie or I'm a real rookie or something like that. I forget what the shirt said, but yeah, after the Mark Murphy comments that he basically called Aaron Rodgers a complicated guy.
2008, Tiger Woods, Rocco Mediate. They have the duel for the ages. We talked about that happened yesterday in an 18-hole playoff. They remain tied after an additional 18 holes at Torrey Pines, forcing sudden death. At 45 years old, Mediate was seeking to become the oldest major winner in history, and Woods was seeking his 14th career major. Woods wins after a par on the 91st hole, the 19th playoff hole.
That's got to be one of the greatest showdowns in a golf major that I've ever seen.
Unbelievable, right?
And remember, Tiger was doing it on the banged-up knee. Never get to stop and grab his knee and bend over, and he could barely walk at times.
2008, that was.
He gutted that thing out.
2015, the NBA Finals. Golden State Warriors. They beat Cleveland 105-97 in Game 6. First title in 40 years. The 4th in franchise history. MVP? Andre Iguodala. One of the most unheralded. It's not. That's like akin to like when somebody wins the Super Bowl MVP, like Larry Brown,
Dexter Jackson,
right? Like the best player wins Finals MVP.
Should.
Andre Iguodala gets one because of his defense, because no one else did much in that series.
Well, the problem was that a lot of people said they should have given it to Steph Curry, but then he had that one rough game, and they held it against him in the voting. And there's a lot of people now who look back on it, they're like, you should have just voted for Steph. Like, that was ridiculous.
Yes. Those are things that happened on this day. Do you remember them? Hope you did. They were fun. All right, when we come back, how wide open are these NBA playoffs? We'll ask ESPN radio host Jason Fitz when he joins me next. All right, don't forget tonight, Sixers and Hawks, 97.3 ESPN. The coverage begins at 7:30 right here on 97.3, which means the tip-off will be sometime around 9. Ridiculous. All right, Jason Fitz is here. He's been filling in on the network for Max, so that's why he's not in his normal 3 spot today. But he was kind enough to jump off into the next hour, which is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. All right, here we go. Jason Fitz is with us, and, of course, he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And I guess, Jay, you woke up this morning, you might have had a thought, and now the entire NBA has been blown upside down and inside out.
It's funny. When I talked to Ramona Shelburne today on Max, you could hear the chaos in her voice. And Ramona's one of the best pros that we have at covering everything. And just hearing sort of the head spinning that's going on. Nobody expected not just the injury announcements, but then you couple that with the coaching changes. It's been a wild day in the NBA.
Yeah, the coaching changes is one thing. I mean, but right now on the court, we got Kawhi Leonard. It looked like an innocent little thing. It looks like it went from a knee sprain to an ACL sprain. And now that he might not be out, that opens up the West. And then all of a sudden, Chris Paul might not be able to play at the start of the season, out indefinitely. The Jazz right now, the leaders in the clubhouse out West.
Yeah, the Jazz got to be right now looking at it and saying, hey, some years I always say it's better to be lucky than good. And the Jazz are very good. But boy, is everything just sort of parting the right way for them, where you can look at it and say, okay. And this feels like a year of the war of attrition. I mean, who's going to be the healthiest at the end of the year will decide who the NBA champion is, not who's going to be the best. I mean, this is one of those years where I'm not sure the best team is going to win the title, but certainly whoever can put the healthiest bodies on the floor at the end of the season will. And that's sort of, to me, it's interesting. It's less predictable. Like, we always bag on the NBA for being so easy to predict going into the season. This year is not that. So I think we should enjoy the ride.
All right, so what's a more impactful loss? The Clippers losing Kawhi or the Nets losing their 2 guys not being 100%? I mean, Harden, I don't know that he's going to be impactful the rest of the way. If he's doing what he did last night, you can't win a championship like that. Who knows when Kyrie's coming back?
Yeah, and I think the Nets, look, realistically, what KD did last night was so incredibly special. I don't think we can bank on that happening, not just through the rest of this series, but then through the rest of the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, we don't know when we're going to get any of the rest of the Nets stars back. So it's easy to say in my mind that that's the more debilitating one. But it isn't, only because I don't trust Paul George. Like, Paul George is not – there's no conversation now that puts Paul George in the Batman conversation. It's squarely is he even a good enough Robin? And that's how poorly he's played at times throughout the course of this playoff. And if there's a guy that you need to step up, it's going to be him. The point per game differential without Kawhi for the Clippers is about 10 points less. That's substantial. They don't have anywhere to make it up from. So the Clippers sold us this bill of, hey, we're not only star heavy, we're also depth heavy. And I'm not buying any of it now. I mean, Utah is a better team. They're going to win this series. I think they might have won either way, but Kawhi, you're going to miss so much on the defensive side of the court. I just don't see. I keep thinking about what Luka happened here. Like, think about how great Luka was, and then Kawhi said, nah, you're done. And he couldn't eat anymore, right? Like, who's going to do that for the Clippers? So Paul George cannot, in my mind, step up and get them through a series. So the Clippers are done.
Who's going to do that for them? Why wasn't Giannis doing it for the Bucks last night? I mean, what an epic performance, as you hinted at, from KD, and we can expand on that, but malpractice to defend him. He abused everybody last night. If you're Giannis and your coach doesn't say we're putting you on him, don't you step up and say, Coach, I have him.
Somebody has got to come in and instill a different fire in the Bucks. And that's where, I think Coach Bud has made some really curious decisions along the way over the last couple of years, and we keep giving him benefit of the doubt. But to what you just said right there, there's a place and a time where I want my star to stand up and say, up yours. I'm doing what needs to happen for this team right now. And for Giannis not to do that shows that somebody's got to find that fire in Giannis. Like, there's a lovability to him. But you looked at KD, and like, it's become a meme already, but the way his face looked throughout the course of that game, he had such anger, playing with pure anger, but it was controlled in such an incredible way. And the more PJ Tucker got under his skin, the more it was like 80s wrestling. He's like, all right, slap me in the face. I'm going to keep coming back for more. My arm will not stay down. And that's what we saw from KD last night. I got to see at least a tenth of that from Giannis before I can believe that Giannis can be in that same league. KD was uncoverable and was also just emotional in every right way.
Yeah. Now, at any point, are you watching Giannis and almost feeling bad for him? I mean, the fact that it's like he doesn't have another gear offensively. Here's this guy who's the MVP, and Durant's kind of like, yeah, okay, you're the MVP. You do one thing. I mean, we deal with it here with Ben Simmons, but Simmons has, I always say, the Bucks need Giannis to score. The Sixers don't need Ben Simmons to score. They have Joel Embiid. They have Tobias Harris. They have two guys that make three. If Giannis doesn't score, the Bucks ain't winning. And I almost felt bad for him last night, the way that they're just putting the wall up and saying, go ahead, do what you want. He scores 32 points, but at the end of the day, the limitations, I think, are too much for Giannis without that roster configuration is not going to do it for him.
Well, to your point, and I'll go back to Batman and Robin. We heard the Scottie Pippen conversations about Giannis that people got really fired up about. Like, he's a better better Pippen than Jordan. Well, when you look at Simmons, whatever his limitations are can be masked by the other superstar that they have. There is a spot where Giannis was expected to be all the superstar you would need. And as much as I'll put part of it on Coach Bud for not having the fire or the right game plan, I'll put part of it on the teammates that aren't around him that need to be better. But also, Giannis is the one that doesn't have a great mid-range shot. We all know that. Giannis is the one that doesn't shoot well from the line. We all know that. And there's a concept from the greats, and I'm not saying this is easy, but what do we see from the greats? Constant evolution towards what your weakness is. And we can look at Kobe. You can look at, other than Shaq, we can look at most of the greats and say, hey, where did they improve their game? Well, I'm looking at Giannis right now asking that same question because he needs to take a massive leap as an individual on the court to be the full version of Giannis we thought he could be. Like, if he just wants to be a top 5 player in the NBA for the rest of his life, great, he's there. That's good. If he wants to be in the same breath as the KDs, the LeBrons, the Michaels at some point in his career, he's got to take a huge leap forward. And that's a personal thing that has to happen that we're not seeing happen from him at all.
Yeah, and that's where it's like he's a 2-time MVP, but is he good enough to be the best player on the team that wins a championship? And I think you're kind of sadly starting to reevaluate that. You look like, hey, you can't, it's funny, Jay. Here, it's 50-50. Get rid of Simmons. He stinks. Can't win with them. Got to trade him. I don't know why people like this guy. The other half appreciates him. Got to keep him. Don't win unless you have what he brings to the table. Does anybody ever say, they got to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo? You never hear that, but at what point does that start to creep in that you can't win if he's your best?
1 year. I think they got one more year before everybody's going to start saying, does Giannis want out or do they want out? And they'll have to have a real conversation with themselves about what they can do because what do you see? I mean, Milwaukee's a great indication, right? When you look at the way the roster is built, it's not easy to find 1A. If you think you have one, you mentioned Philly, so many people are, well, Simmons isn't good enough at this, and this. How many teams would kill for a Simmons? You can find one guy and then you're lucky. Can you find two guys that you think you can build around? Now, the 76ers have more than that. Now, I think that Tobias Harris, by the way, is an under-talked about portion of why I think Philly can be very good. But if you look at Milwaukee, they've tried to do that. They've tried to find the right other guys. It just hasn't worked. So now you have a star that hasn't taken a leap forward. You have a coach that doesn't seem to know what he's doing half the time. And then you have a bunch of other people on the roster that just aren't good enough. That's how you end up being Milwaukee, who right now looks like they're going to be the second or third best team in the East for the next 5 years. What good is that?
Yeah, right. They added this roster. They got Drew Holiday. They already had Middleton. So it's like, okay, they have their little big three version, and you have the MVP of the league. The problem, they shot 40% from three last night and still couldn't beat a team that was playing 4-on-5 the whole night. And it's like, the problem was, yeah, you made 40%, but in the end, who was calling the game last night? They said it. Well, late in games, they got to run through Middleton. You ain't winning if you got to run through Middleton.
And late in games is such a key part of that conversation. We watched the Hawks melt down, right, early on in the series where they couldn't even get the ball in bounds and they hang on to win a game early on. I can look at that and say, okay, the Hawks are a young team. We understand that certain moments are going to get them. And that I can have some tip of the hat and say, hey, that's a learning spot. The Bucks are way past that. And you watch the fourth quarter of that game. If anybody watching knew it was inevitable, Milwaukee was losing that game because when it came down to it, every possession felt choked for Milwaukee. Every possession felt tight. And then what did they do on the other end? KD just went in, elevated against whoever they were putting on him, and shot lights out. It was an efficient and also magical game from KD. That was the difference in this. You saw one guy that was like, fine, put my back up against the wall and I will win. And you saw another guy that I can't get the image out of my head, fair or not, of 25, 30 seconds left in the game. Giannis gets thrown the ball in the easiest spot for him to catch it, down by 4, needs to get that bucket, and he drops the ball. Like, that's the difference. KD took advantage of every opportunity, and Giannis, when they needed him the most, shrunk. And that's going to be stuck in everybody's head.
Right. And, we talk about here in Philly, Ben Simmons, they don't need him to be in that spot. They have Joel Embiid. They can go to Tobias Harris. The Bucks need Giannis in that spot, and he just doesn't have it. It's just it's kind of sad. The way they defend him late in that game, they're just way off of him. That's going to be an interesting story. What happens with that marriage? Budenholzer is probably going to be gone, and if they fail again, at what point do they say, okay, we've tried a different coach. Now we got to decide, is it the player that we got to move on from? So that one is going to be huge because he's in a market too, by the way, that, he would probably say, hey, I don't mind if you get me out of here. He has been cool enough, I guess, to say, I'm going to stay here. So that story to me is crazy. Can Trae Young be the best player on a team that wins a title? Maybe not this year, at some point.
Yes, as long as you put some thickness around him. Like, he's just, and what I mean by that, and you guys know this, like, he's just a little guy. Like, there's just a spot where he can shoot from anywhere. He can be a bit of an agitator, but man, there's going to be a spot where they need somebody with enough size. If they really want to beat that team year in and year out, they need the pick and roll guy. They need somebody with some size that can be a disruptor. I think Trae Young, though, yes, absolutely. And it's rare to look at a trade. Like, we can look back now at the trade for Trae Young, Luka Doncic in the draft and say, maybe everybody won in that. Like, you've got 2 young players that are absolutely the types of guys that can win championships and be the guy in that championship. I think Trae has that opportunity to truly be the dynamic face of the league in 10 years.
We have possibly no Chris Paul for the start of this, and that would be disappointing for that Phoenix team, which right now, if Chris Paul's playing, are they the best team?
Yes. If Chris Paul's playing, they are the best team. And by the way, credit to just we were talking about roster construction. You got this young team, and you got all these young pieces, and you're looking around saying, how do we bridge this? How do we get this to the next level? And you suddenly bring in a Chris Paul and the personal relationship he has with his coach, and all of a sudden that just bond comes together, and Chris Paul becomes a different human being. And now they get the best out of Chris Paul combined with the young roster that was ready to explode. Phoenix deserves a lot of credit for the way they built that roster and for what they've done. And frankly, I think we're going to end up, when we get this Phoenix-Utah series, it is going to be a dynamic, electric, incredible series to watch. And we're going to love watching Donovan Mitchell go against all of that too. Like, the young stars on display in the West are going to be absolutely great to watch.
Yeah, last one. I guess Van Gundy, they part ways. Brooks, they part ways. Everyone's parting ways. Let me tell you, when I'm done here, I will be fired. They will have to fire me, or I will tell them I'm leaving. We are not parting ways. I will be fired, or I will tell them I'm out of here. All this parting ways stuff. But Van Gundy, that job, I would imagine coaches are going to line up for that thing.
Yeah, I mean, coaches have to be looking at it and saying, my only concern is, why is he gone so fast? I know it underachieved, and they have a lot of talent there. But the only thing that I'd say is that Zion's now gone through 2 coaches as a pro, right? And so are the expectations in New Orleans so huge that you got to go in and do it now? And the other thing, too, to keep in mind, if I'm a coach, I am going to at least casually step back and see if I can see what happens in this Milwaukee series. Because to me, if they lose this series the next day, Budenholzer's out. And so the question is, do you think you can get the most out of Giannis? In my mind, there is still proof of concept around who Giannis can be that makes that such an appealing job. And there's patience. Milwaukee has shown tremendous patience in the way they've done everything. So, but that New Orleans job is absolutely dynamite, especially in my mind. You look for somebody that might want to step out of college ranks, come up and work with a young team and really be a dynamic presence.
At Jason Fitz, he's filling in for Kellerman this week on the Max Kellerman Show, so he was kind enough to join us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. The NBA playoffs continue tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the Sixers and the Hawks. We got Bucks and Nets tomorrow. Jay Fitz, good to see you, man.
Good to see you, my friend. Have a great week.
And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Coming up, Mitch Lawrence. We'll talk a little Sixers, Hawks, a little NBA, these coaching vacancies. There's GM vacancies, and so much more with Sirius XM NBA Radio's Mitch Lawrence next here on the Sports Bash. All right, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. We've got the NBA playoffs, and all the NBA stories are wild. Kawhi Leonard looks like he's done for the rest of the postseason. He's got a supposed ACL injury, some sort of knee injury. They think it could be an ACL. He's gone. It looks like Chris Paul is in the NBA COVID protocols, so he will not be ready for Game 1, it appears. He's out indefinitely. Also, we got some coaching news. Stan Van Gundy's out as the Pelicans coach after 1 year. They part ways. And Scotty Brooks and the Wizards could not agree to a contract. They part ways. Everybody's just parting ways. I said, you're fired. That's what happens. You get fired. Why can't we just say people get fired? God bless them. They just part ways. No, guess what? If I'm one day I'm not here, it's because I got fired. You can be sure of that. It's okay to say you got fired. Who cares? I don't care. It's going to happen eventually at some point, you would imagine, for everybody. The coach could get fired. You're allowed to say we fired the coach. I can't stand that. That bothers me. Oh, we couldn't agree. We parted ways. Everybody just parts ways. Now, the Mavericks today, them and their GM, Donnie Nelson, have parted ways after 24 years. Now, that whole thing has been a crazy thing with the internal friction with him and the research department and Luka Doncic. So another one where I don't know how they called that one. I don't know what they called it. I think they didn't say that he got fired. They just said he's not there anymore. But the NBA has certainly been turned upside down on its head. But the big story really was last night in that game with Kevin Durant and the Nets winning that. I don't know how they won that game. I really don't. Durant it was probably, I'm trying to think back, all the Jordan years, all these LeBron years. I mean, LeBron had that huge game with 50-plus points in the game when he played for Cleveland a couple of years ago, 2018. That was one. But just the overall numbers and the way that he did it, I mean, it was just unbelievable. He had no help out there. He had absolutely no help out there. People talk about James Harden was a big lift last night. He scored 5 points. He was 0 for 8 from three-point range. Look, hey, I give him credit for being out there and trying to help out. But my gosh, the Bucks find themselves down 3-2 now. They blow a 16-point halftime lead. It was very reminiscent of what the Sixers did the night before, where they're up 18 and Trae Young just took over. Now, he didn't take over to the same extent that Kevin Durant did. I thought what the Bucks did was more – oh, man. I mean, what the Bucks did was more egregious than the way the Sixers lost that game because basically one guy beat them. Kevin Durant went bonkers. It was one of the best playoff performances maybe in NBA history, but a lot went wrong there. Durant scored 49 points, but he only took 2 shots when Giannis was the primary defender, and they both came in the first half of that game last night. Malpractice. Unbelievable. Antetokounmpo was the defensive player of the year and was named first team all defense. Right? How does he not say, I am coach, I am taking on Kevin Durant here? I don't understand it. Durant missed both of his attempts when he was guarded by Giannis Antetokounmpo. When he was guarded by P.J. Tucker or Chris Middleton, he was 11 of 15 against those guys. So for the entire fourth quarter in the series, Durant had not taken a single shot when Giannis is the defender. You could have brought help, right? According to Second Spectrum, he averaged 2 points per direct drive when Milwaukee brought a help defender. That is tied for the best efficiency on drives when an opponent brings a help defender at least 10 times over the last 4 postseasons. So whatever they tried last night, that blueprint needs to be ripped up and put to rest. The Bucks need to watch that game and say, never again will we follow this blueprint right here. Horrendous, malpractice. The way they that game plan last night was hideous. The NBA had a wild day today, and that's why we need to bring in my boy Mitch Lawrence from Sirius XM NBA Radio to talk about it. And he's got plenty on his mind, I'm sure. As Mitch, I would imagine that this is about as wide open an NBA you have ever covered, and you've been covering this game for a long time.
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? I mean, and the day's not over, right? Who knows what's going to happen now? But, yeah, we've had coaches firings. We've had front office moves. We've had more injuries. I mean, to major all-star, all-NBA, MVP quality players. I mean, the bottom line is it's a great day if you're Utah Jazz. You don't have to worry about Kawhi Leonard anymore. He's done with a knee injury. You're not going to see him the rest of that series. Paul George is going to take over anytime soon. And then Chris Paul apparently is now in this COVID protocol. I don't know how many games he's going to miss if Utah advances to play Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals. So, I mean, it's just a craziness. It's like 9 players who have been all-stars have missed at least one playoff game this year, which is it's a big record that the league has set, a bad record. And you just don't know how many more guys are going to be dropping. They're dropping like flies.
Yeah, I get what LeBron's saying. He's like, I told him this would happen. I guess the question would be, what was his plan? What did he want them to do? Start in February? I mean, what was the fix?
A lot of people wanted to start Martin Luther King Day, which is late January. But I'll say this: LeBron James is the most powerful player in the sport. He and Chris Paul, the president of the union, signed off on the deal. It was collectively bargained with the owners. It wasn't forced down the players' throats by the owners. This was collectively bargained, and they agreed to it. And, let's not forget, while he had a quick turnaround, there were a lot of teams who were off for months and months and months, like the New York Knicks, right? Yep. They didn't even make the bubble. Their season ended in March. They didn't resume until when? December. So, and look, LeBron also got hurt. We know that, and that was an unfortunate injury for him, and he never really recovered. And Anthony Davis had problems. And you know what? For some players, maybe the quick turnaround was bad, but I don't buy that across the board, that it was the quick turnaround. You also got to remember, they didn't play back-to-back games, and yeah, there was COVID issues. We know all that, but this is LeBron once again. He can't stand the fact that, he's not getting attention. He's out of the limelight because his team isn't playing. He's not playing. So he wants to create some buzz and some news, and everybody, of course, has to jump on it.
All right, let's go down the list of things that are going on in the NBA. Let's start tonight. Sixers and Hawks, game number 5. Philly with an abysmal loss the other night. Obviously, Embiid did not look to be himself. But if Embiid's not himself again, can the Sixers win this series?
No, I don't think they can. I mean, look, he went 0 for 12 in the second half. The last layup, he was feeble. I know he had no spring, no explosion, et cetera. Can you make one basket, right? And if he's out or if he's compromised like he was, I give Atlanta a great chance. You got to really respect the job that Trae Young has done. I mean, we've been saying this for the last few years about Philadelphia. If not Joel Embiid as a late game option, who? And you saw it the other night. Ben Simmons is sitting on the bench because he can't shoot threes. He doesn't shoot. And so it comes down to a shot by Seth Curry.
Yeah.
I think Daryl Morey's sitting there going, yeah, I like what I'm seeing here. I've got Shake Milton passing to Seth Curry. That's not anybody's idea of a team that's going to win a championship.
That's interesting.
So,
you said something that opens my eyes a little bit there, because I can't remember a time, and if I do, I apologize. If there is one, I can't think of it, that Doc Rivers, who defends Simmons a lot, I mean, he goes out of his way to defend him, but the actions speak louder, and the fact that he sat him on the bench, is that the eye-opening move for Ben Simmons to finally say, I've got to add that to my game?
There's a guy who's an all-star. He didn't make all-NBA, but he's all-NBA quality in a lot of ways, and he's sitting on the bench on the biggest play of the season because they know he can make a shoot. He won't even attempt the three-pointer. That speaks volumes. So what have I been saying to you and other people about the Sixers ever since Jimmy Butler left? Who's going to get me a shot late in the shot clock and make something out of nothing?
Yeah.
If it's not Joel Embiid, it's not going to be anybody.
Yeah.
And that's the problem for Philadelphia. So I give Atlanta a decent chance, even though DeAndre Hunter, they don't have him. He was a key part of that team. Trae Young is going to make life difficult for the Sixers. And that's why if you're the Nets or you're Milwaukee, especially the Nets, you're looking at this going, our road to the NBA Finals is going to be pretty good, because that Joel Embiid, he's not going to get any better playing on that knee. He's going to get worse. And if it's Atlanta, you're thinking you're going to beat the Hawks.
Well, that's the problem. You just said it. Embiid, he might not be. He said it. I'm not going to be 100% at all during these playoffs. But I guess, the Sixers did seem to have a formula that Embiid was turning into the guy that could get a bucket from here, there. He could hit this shot, that shot. He was making shots, but that Embiid we saw the other night can't do it. They need something else. And if it's Tobias Harris, we didn't see it on, what was that, Monday night?
It's not Tobias Harris. I mean, you just look at it, his history. He's not that. He's played like that. He is paid like that kind of a player. He is not that type of player when it comes to performance. So that's the problem for Philadelphia. Who has a player like that? Well, you saw what Kevin Durant did last night. You saw an epic performance. Yes, it was at home. No, they weren't down 3-2. It was 2-2. But James Harden is basically walking around on one leg, and the Bucks refuse to attack him when he's on the defensive end. And Kyrie Irving was out at a birthday party or somewhere. I don't even know if he was at the arena. So yeah, the Nets do have that one player, as he showed last night, with an amazing second half and just one of the all-time performances. But we've seen that from Durant. The surprising thing is this is 2 years after he blows out an Achilles, Mike, which used to be for an athlete to have an Achilles back in the day. It was the death knell. Your career is done. Now he seems to have come, dare I say, all the way back from that. And now you're going to have to contend with that.
Yeah, that was one of the best playoff performances ever. I would say, just a caveat, the game plan to not double him or put Giannis was malpractice last night.
Well, there's a lot of things that are going to cost Mike Budenholzer his job. Not making, Durant did find people for assists when he had to get the ball to Landry Shamet and other people, especially Jeff Green, who played out of his mind. I mean, Jeff Green, this was a throwback game with him hitting all 7 threes. He had never done that before. I think he had 6 baskets in the playoffs up to then total. But what Mike Budenholzer did, especially when, it's been in time immemorial, when you have a player you're going against who's coming back on a leg injury, who hasn't played in a couple weeks, and is kind of doughy as it is, maybe a little out of shape like a James Harden. What does everybody say? You have to attack that player defensively. And they never did that. And then at the end, I think the Nets had a 2 or 3 point lead, and Giannis is in the mid post against him. Against Harden, he comes up shooting a fadeaway jump shot, which was, as Charles Barkley says on TV, and he puts it well, Milwaukee's a dumb team. They have a low basketball IQ. They never attack teams the way they should. We're sitting at home knowing the type of moves that Mike Budenholzer should make. They never do that. And meanwhile, while they're not attacking James Harden, the Nets are constantly attacking Brook Lopez, right? They're going at him. They're going at Connaughton. Because why? Steve Nash used to be a point guard, and Mike D'Antoni knows that end of the floor better than anybody.
Yeah, I know the Bucks. It just seems that the limit. We talk about it with Ben Simmons a lot here. They take him off the floor for that. The limitations in Giannis' game, and the one thing I say, Mitch, with the differences in the rosters is they need Giannis to score. The Sixers don't need they don't need Ben Simmons to score. It'd be nice. If the Bucks don't get him to score, they got no shot. They need him to score. His limitations the last couple of years, they're starting to show, and you wonder if the Bucks come to a point where, here in Philly, they say, you got to get rid of Ben Simmons. You got to trade him. You can't use him at the last. Are they going to start saying that about him?
No, because first of all, you know what? He signed long-term. He wants to be there, Giannis. Second thing is you got to remember Milwaukee. I mean, free agents flocking to Milwaukee. Are they kicking the doors down to go play for the Bucks? No, they're not. Small market, out of the way. That's why it was such a huge deal on the eve of the season when he went to the long-term extension, because you knew if he walked out the door, that could really cripple that franchise for a long time. Mike, there are certain franchises and a lot of small markets in the NBA. Your Indiana's, Orlando's, Milwaukee's, teams like that,
right?
Where if a big-time player leaves, like what happened in Orlando? Shaquille O'Neal left after they went to a finals back in 1995. They weren't the same for 14 years until they got, back there with Dwight Howard for one time. That was an outlier. And those type of markets, they can't afford to. They have to re-sign those guys and hope that even though he's a 2-time MVP, they hope that he can finally get his game where he doesn't struggle. I've never seen a 2-time MVP, Mike, in the regular season who in the playoffs struggles so much to get his shot.
It's I almost felt bad for him last night. I hate to say it. I'm watching him, and I felt bad for him.
What compounds it is when he's on the court against Kevin Durant, because then you see one guy who's a level above a 2-time MVP. And, Kevin Durant had that thing with Jay Williams, which got a lot of publicity last week about what he did and did. Don't compare me to Giannis. And I can believe, hey, that's words I can believe Durant said, even though he denied it and called Jay Williams a liar. But that was, if you're a Bucks fan, that point was driven home last night. Kevin Durant shouldn't be compared to Giannis. He's way better in playoffs than Giannis Antetokounmpo.
No doubt. Sirius XM NBA radio host Mitch Lawrence is with me here. All right, LA, they lose Kawhi. I would imagine that they are pretty much done.
Toast. What are you going to do? What Paul George has this now? Hey, I got this, Paul George. He ain't got anything.
How is Paul George
Utah,
being the Robin, the biggest disappointment of a pairing that you could? I mean, that was an automatic pass to the finals for them. They're not going to do it twice now.
Well, we thought it was going to be their best path to the finals since, Chris Paul could never get there with Lob City. Here's the problem, though. This is really where you would have to sit Kawhi Leonard down, because he's the one who said to the Clippers, I will come there as a free agent from Toronto if you trade for Paul George. You have to sit Kawhi Leonard down and go, what were you thinking about when you identified Paul George as the guy you wanted to be Batman to be Robin to your Batman? Makes no sense, because Paul George has a history of coming up short and coming up small in these playoffs.
He was coming up short. He was coming up short and small. He was coming up short and small as the main guy. Figure if you're the second guy, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you know what? It hasn't worked out that way, has it? And this is going to be a big problem in Clipperland. Because now conjecture is when Kawhi comes back off this knee, and we'll see how serious the knee is, are he and Paul George done? Are they going to, first of all, Kawhi's a free agent. Let's not forget. So, you know what? There are going to be plenty of teams, even off a knee injury, that are going to look at him and say, you know what? We'll roll the dice on him. You know what? Even though he's got the history, he doesn't play, he's load management and stuff. When he does play, you see, he's obviously still an all-NBA type of talent. So, I mean, there could be massive changes in Clipperland.
Wow.
You never know. Last year was Doc Rivers. This year it could be Lawrence Frank.
Wow.
Who runs the show, who could be on the way out.
Crazy. So what does this Chris Paul indefinitely? I mean, this thing's hard to read, I guess.
Let me ask you a question. Does anybody outside of the NBA offices know what the rules are regarding somebody who tests positive? How many games they have to miss?
Right. I
don't know. I don't know. There's no rule. They can go and make it up as they choose and please. And, this is obviously a huge setback for Phoenix. I don't know how many games he's going to miss. I would say at least one. But, when LeBron James remember, he went to some sort of a party back when the Lakers were still playing in the playoffs. And, there was something he was fined, or he was reprimanded because it was, he was exposed to COVID, whatever. And, there was all this talk about, will the league suspend him? The league never suspends LeBron James. Are they going to suspend the president of the Players Association, Chris Paul? I don't know if the league would do that. They to me, it's one of these things where they're going to make up the rule as they go along here. And I mean, but that's just a devastating blow for Phoenix, because, what are you going to do? Put your team in the hands of campaign and expect to beat a Utah team? That's not going to happen. So and Chris Paul, you saw what he did against Denver. He's just been, he's lights out. He played remarkably in all the fourth quarters, the star of the series along with Devin Booker. And really, this is his first chance to get to an NBA Finals, and look what happened.
Unbelievable news today. And then, of course, you had the two coaches. You've got Stan Van Gundy out. Yeah. You've got Scotty Brooks out. And you've got an executive, Donnie Nelson, out as well. So what a day this has been.
Stan Van Gundy, his problems were he couldn't get along with or he had problems dealing with, and they had problems dealing with the two young players down there, Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. And so, Stan came in and he followed a very player-friendly coach in Alvin Gentry. And, Alvin had a certain way. He didn't have a lot of demands on players in terms of playing defense and accountability. Stan Van Gundy comes in throwing his weight around. He comes in, basically putting the screws to the players in terms of, this is what we demand of you in terms of playing defense, low turnovers, et cetera. And these guys didn't want to hear it. And it was reflected in their play, by the way. They couldn't even qualify for a freaking play-in game at Zion. So they've been a huge disappointment. And, in this day and age, you got to listen to the players. There was going to be, I guess, if they would have brought the word was they were going to bring Stan back for a half a year, give him a half a year. I guess when the players heard that, they basically got the word. And one of the rumors floating out there, and I'll describe it as that, is that they found out that Zion was like, well, you know what? If you bring Stan back, maybe I won't re-sign here when my first contract's up.
Unbelievable.
That's the way things work.
Last one for Mitch. As the Nets are going right now with a, 50% James Harden. We don't know with Kyrie. Is that team still the favorite?
Still the favorite. Yeah, well, coming off Kevin Durant performance, I'd have to say because you've got Embiid who's compromised. You can't, the Atlanta Hawks are not going to be up to it, I don't think. Wouldn't that be hilarious if they did get to the finals? And, you can't trust Milwaukee. So in the East, I would say definitely. And in terms of the West, considering, Utah's still down Mike Conley Jr. And that showed in the last two games when, Donovan Mitchell needs some help there. So I'd give him a slim nod. But James Harden could re-injure that hamstring very easily. Basically, he was playing at half speed last night. He never went to the basket hard. He didn't play hard at all. And they say Kyrie Irving's done for at least this series. Well, let's say the Bucks somehow have a miracle finish and win the last two games. They're done anyway, the Nets. So, then I guess you'd have to favor Milwaukee. But, boy, the way they play and their low IQ, I wouldn't trust them at all in a big spot.
Well, you got Philly and the Hawks tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. That coverage starts at 7:30. And, of course, Tom McGinnis has the call. He is Mitch Lawrence, Sirius XM NBA Radio. And he, like all guests, appeared via the boardwalk on the hotline. All right, Mitch, enjoy him, man.
You too, Mike. Thanks.
All right, great to talk to Mitch. Great energy, as always, breaking it down for us here. Who's the favorite in the NBA right now? Who the heck knows? You got no Kawhi. You got no Chris Paul, possibly for a couple games. He said Mike Conley. Every team has somebody out, except the Bucks. I mean, even the Hawks have lost DeAndre Hunter. I guess the Bucks lost DiVincenzo. But is that a big enough loss? Apparently, it's not. It's been, man. All right, coming up, we'll get some NFL news, notes, as we are 6 weeks away from training camp opening. We will start to take a look at some of the news and notes out there. Baker Mayfield, some quarterback stuff, all that and more. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL writer. He joins me next. All right, thanks to Mitch Lawrence from Sirius XM NBA Radio. As we discussed a lot of what's happening in the NBA tonight, you can hear the Sixers and the Nets right here on 97.3 ESPN, and the Hawks, not the Nets. Foreshadowing, hopefully, we'll see. Right now, we'll go over back to the NFL. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL as the offseason. Jeff, do you know the training camp date? Isn't there a date that all the teams except for the teams that are playing in the Hall of Fame game and the first Thursday night, what's that date?
It'd be July 27th, Tuesday, July 27th, Mike.
July 27th. So that is about a month from next week. We will be July 27th is next Sunday. So we were almost 1 month away from the start to training camp here, and a lot of teams getting their stuff done here. And I guess I hate to because this isn't really a lot of our businesses, but this whole vaccinated versus the unvaccinated players things looks like it's going to be a little bit of a stare down here. And they're saying that if you are one of those unvaccinated players, that you're going to have some problems this year.
Yeah, basically, I'll make a long story short here. Basically, you're going to have to go through everything you went through in 2020 if you're not vaccinated. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. If you're vaccinated, you're going to get all the perks that anybody who's vaccinated around the country has at this point.
So, I mean, do you see some sort of stare down here between the players and the Players Association and the league? I mean, is this going to be something that is going to linger, or are they just going to have to accept that?
I think they're just going to have to accept it, honestly. Like, if it's almost like if you don't, if you want to be with your teammates, if you want the benefits of, pretty much you want this normal lifestyle, get vaccinated or educate yourself and get vaccinated or have someone educate you and, try to help you out. I know some people are still on the fence about it, but I mean, I don't know how much proof I don't know how much more proof you need right now. I mean, it's out of my lane. I'm not going to tell anybody to get vaccinated.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not my business or the league's business. That's the thing. But the league is certainly slanting it towards if you're not. The more I keep reading this, and I'm like, man, this seems like it's going to turn into a situation here because some teams are saying they're having problems and other teams, I mean, this is going to be, and we just see the Chris Paul thing today. So it seems like this is kind of, in a world that feels like it's almost behind us, it almost kind of crept back in. That's all, I guess, today.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Mike, I honestly – you brought into my next point. I don't think the NFL wants a Chris Paul situation where we're in the heart of December in a playoff race here and say your starting quarterback is gone because he didn't decide not to get vaccinated. And again, that's his right, but that's the risk you are taking. It's just like before when you were on the fence getting a flu shot or not. Yeah, a flu shot makes you sick, but it also prevents you from getting said flu. And COVID-19 is a heck of a lot worse.
Lil Nas X says over.
All right, Jeff, your cohort over at CBS, Cody Benjamin, wrote about landing spots for Stephon Gilmore. We touched a little bit about the possibility of him, but do you anticipate he's not showing up if they are to trade him? And do you anticipate him playing for the Patriots this year?
I expect to stare down, honestly. And, Cody did a great job on that article, by the way. He basically pointed out any cornerback needy team that was pretty much at the salary cap space to take on Stephon Gilmore. My issue is I think the Patriots could try to get something done with him, but I think they want him to play out this year before they do get something done with him. And I think Gilmore wants his money now. I think that's the big issue here. I think he wants that money up front. He wants to make sure he's taken care of. I don't really think he wants to lead the Patriots, but at the same time, the Patriots spent a lot of money this offseason to improve their roster, and I think they need Stephon Gilmore right now more than Stephon Gilmore needs the Patriots.
He puts Cleveland, San Francisco, Indianapolis, Arizona, Seattle, Dallas, L.A., Las Vegas, but Philadelphia needs a corner bad. Would they not make the call?
I think they make the call. I think they're definitely interested in getting a player like Stephon Gilmore. Again, I just think those teams more have the salary cap space to take on Gilmore's contract and give him an extension. The Eagles would have to clear a little bit of cap space up there.
They have a way to do it.
They do have a way to do it, and it involves a certain tight end, but it basically comes down to, do you want to keep Stephon Gilmore or do you want to keep Zach Ertz?
Okay, that's a good question. So if I told you can get Gilmore, but you got to give up Ertz, who fits better on this team, Gilmore or Ertz?
Gilmore, because you need that number 2 cornerback.
Right.
It's pretty simple. You have a tight end 1. You have a tight end 2. If you want to be great at tight end and help Jalen Hurts out, that's awesome. If you believe points are the key to winning games, that's awesome. But we got to be honest here, Mike. do you really want Michael Jacquet back there?
No, but the question would be then, does that deal make sense for both teams? I mean, New England wants the tight end spot. Zach Ertz could be one of the best in the league still. You put him in New England. Could Howie Roseman make the call and convince Bill Belichick, hey, man, I got Ertz. Gilmore doesn't want to be there. Hey, can't we do something here?
But New England already got their tight ends. That's the other issue.
They did sign a couple tight ends in the offseason. Yes, they did. But are they better than Zach Ertz? And aren't they a team that doesn't mind running 2 tight end sets?
I think they overpay Hunter Henry. I'll say that.
Guy who's been hurt a lot.
Jonnu Smith's a nice player, but I think they overpay Hunter Henry. So, again, if they didn't overpay Hunter Henry, I think they should have waited out the market a little bit. I just think they jumped on the gun a little bit there because I still think the Los Angeles Chargers would be an awesome fit for Zach Ertz, but they also signed Jared Cook, so we'll see.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, they've already got the 2 tight ends there, but it's one of those things where you sign them before this opportunity and you feel like, we got these 2, but this guy's better than those 2 guys. Hunter Henry's been hurt so much. I mean, you can't rely on him. Okay, I'm at least like it's something that the Eagles could almost make the call without having to break the bank because they're almost planning on playing without Ertz anyway, I guess.
And I'd rather take Stephon Gilmore than a 3rd-round pick because you know what you're getting in the proven commodity.
Do you think you're getting a 3rd-round pick for Zach Ertz still?
No, not at all. But if you're the Eagles, you're a winner if you get Stephon Gilmore for Zach Ertz. You're a clear winner.
If you get Gilmore. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I think but it's funny because I was talking about this today. I said if the Patriots end up getting Ertz, isn't he the guy that everybody like fantasy football people are, he's going to have a huge season because he's playing for New England. Like I feel like Ertz in New England is almost a perfect spot. I mean, I'm not saying he's Gronk, but you could put him in like almost like the Aaron Hernandez role out there.
I think New England fans would embrace him after what he did to him in the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
So they probably would be like, hey, man, we just got one of the best tight ends in football.
So what would a Gilmore do for the Eagles?
Well, it would solve a quarterback situation that needs a lot of solving. I think you can put Avonte Max back in the slot. I think you can play Zach McPherson that you could develop him a little more, even if they think Zach McPherson's right, you still have cornerback depth. All of a sudden you have cornerback depth there. You can even get away with a Michael Jacquet and Craig James on your roster at this point.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Look, your depth would be an issue. There's no question about that. But now all of a sudden you would have Slay and Gilmore. It would go from a weak spot, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, to being probably the best unit on your football team.
You basically have 2 guys that have made a case to be the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in their career at some point.
Right. You would be going from the weak spot on the team to possibly your 2 starting corners being the strong suit of your defense.
With Anthony Harris and Rodney McLeod behind them. I mean, that's a pretty formidable secondary. I'm not going to lie.
Right, exactly. And that almost takes you from saying it's an older defense, though. There's no question about that. Your defensive line's aging. Your secondary now, all of a sudden, you got Slay over 30. I think Gilmore's right around over 30. Harris is probably I guess Harris would be the young guy of that group, right? Or Wilson.
You know what, he's 28, 29?
Yeah, I don't think he's not quite at 30 yet, but you got McLeod who's coming off injury. You would have an aging defense, and you would have that whole thought of, okay, when are we going to break down? It would be a defense that probably needs depth, and they don't have it.
It gives you time to develop, though, cornerbacks. Not this year, but next year. Say you can draft those cornerbacks and those safeties with your first couple picks next year. It's almost like when you had Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor. You knew they were in their early 30s, but they were still producing. And, yeah, they eventually broke down and got hurt, but then you get a year or two where, okay, we can develop Leo Shepard, we can develop Sheldon Brown. You can basically have that situation with Darius Slay and Stephon Gilmore. You basically sign Gilmore to an extension. You got 2 good years of Darius Slay and Stephon Gilmore before you decide to cut bait.
Got some texts coming in on our conversation here, so we'll read them off because Eagles and Gilmore, not a good fit. Gilmore's in a win-now type situation. The Eagles are looking more at long-term success.
Are they, though?
You took the words out of my mouth because all of their actions this offseason would say otherwise. I'm not saying, and nor do I believe that this is a Super Bowl team by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they think this team is a NFC East winning team.
I think they feel this team can go to the playoffs. I agree, Mike. I believe that their thought process is if Jalen Hurts is what we think he is, we have a chance to go back to the playoffs and we have a chance to win a bad NFC East, and then we'll build our team with our future first-round draft capital. That's how I think that they're planning on this. Yeah, do they want to get younger? Absolutely, but you also signed Ryan Kerrigan. You've signed Eric Wilson. That's not getting younger.
You signed Richard Rodgers. You brought in Nick Mullins. I mean, you could develop a younger quarterback. They decided not to go that route. They went out and got, as you mentioned, Kerrigan. They said, look, instead of developing some of our younger guys, their offseason, Jeff, has, I don't want to say mirrored their 2017 offseason, but they took a swing on a lot of guys late in free agency who were quote-unquote role-type players, and I'm feeling like they are almost trying to follow that same blueprint. We were 7-9. Not a lot of people believed in us. We made a couple of these veteran moves, and voila, they went from 7-9 to 13-3.
I also think,
not happening, in my opinion, this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went from a 4-win team to, say, a 9-win team in this division.
Yeah, see, this is what I feel with them. They are looking at it as we have a chance to compete, we have a chance to go to the playoffs, but also they have an opportunity here, like you said, Mike, not to go 13-3, obviously, but I think to speed up this retooling process, if you will. And we have to look back at this draft class. After the 4th round, a lot of these guys were undrafted free agents. That's why Jamie Newman ain't here. I don't think Jamie Newman would have been on this roster in minicamp if it was a normal year. Let's just be honest. They probably would have drafted the quarterback, but they probably felt there is no reason to draft these players. That's why you saw them draft defensive tackles and defensive ends like Patrick Johnson and the kid from USC, because those players you can get in undrafted free agency or late in the draft, and they can be solid contributors for this team. Yeah, for every Elijah Qualls, there's also a Sam Rayburn, for example. So that's why I think they did what they did.
It'll be interesting because, as that text message says about Gilmore is in a win now type situation. I don't know that he would get to pick where he wants to play.
You don't get to pick where you want. This isn't the NBA.
Right. It's not like if he doesn't show up there and they want to trade him, he doesn't get to say, you know what, I'm going to show up. Don't trade me there.
There's only one player I think that in the last 3 years that got traded to actually where he wanted to go, and that was Jalen Ramsey and the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, yes, and that was like a weird in-season situation, where he was playing. Right? He was playing, though.
Yeah, he played the first week, and then he basically said, I'm done. I had enough of this. It was after week 1, and then he just never showed up. And Jacksonville just said, okay, we're going to get what we can for you.
Yeah, that Gilmore thing's something to keep an eye on, though, because the more and more I keep reading stuff up there, he's not showing up. New England, if they're like, you don't show up, all right, fine, you're out of here. I wouldn't be shocked if, put it this way, I would feel, if you asked me right now, Jeff, I'd say Gilmore's on a different team to start.
This isn't Jamal Adams where Seattle basically excused him. I think Seattle wants to get a contract done with him.
Boom. Seattle came out and said we're okay with him not being here.
Yeah, they're completely fine. He didn't get fined. He's happy. They're happy. I mean, I'm sure they're working out a long-term contract with him that everybody's getting on them about. But look, I'll give the Seattle Seahawks a lot of credit. Their two biggest stories this offseason were Russell Wilson and Jamal Adams, and they nipped that in the bud.
How did they fix that? And could Green Bay follow anything they did?
Well, here's a simple thing. Pete Carroll and John Schneider didn't call out Russell Wilson. They just said, hey, talk to Russell, we want him here. We want him in Seattle. Wow. They did more by not saying anything. The Packers just keep talking, and they probably shouldn't do that. They should have took the code of silence this entire time.
I'm definitely the Rodgers stuff we spoke about earlier this week. I'm definitely keeping my eye on this Gilmore stuff, though, because if you ask me, will Gilmore be in New England? I would say no. He will not play. They will trade him, I think.
Yeah. By the way,
I feel more that they would trade him than Green Bay will trade Rodgers.
Yeah, exactly. Another point I wanted to make Russell Wilson too. I love when Russell Wilson basically came out and said, I did not want to go anywhere. So let's get that clear. But if they were to trade me, those were the teams I wanted to go to. That's what he said. I think that's where the story got a little misconstrued. They almost made it sound like Russell Wilson wanted to go to this team. No, he really didn't want to leave Seattle at all.
Yeah. All right.
They wanted to move on from him.
Yeah, I do believe that. I think he is a Seahawk. He's he embodies that go Hawk every time. He likes being a Seahawk. I do kind of agree with that. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, as we said, we're about 6 weeks away from training camp. I feel like every day something kind of happens. Baker Mayfield, he's going to be an interesting guy to keep an eye on.
MVP, didn't you hear?
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of expectations for that team. I'm interested to see. This is his last year on the rookie deal, I think, before they got to start talking extension. He says he's in no rush here, but I always keep thinking, like, is Baker – because remember, when he got drafted number 1 that year, people were surprised. There was a lot of quarterbacks. They're like, really? They got the number 1 pick?
I thought Lamar should have been number 1.
Lamar Jackson in Cleveland, number 1. Wow, that would have been interesting.
I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft, and – obviously this quarterback class is turning out to be great. I mean, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of stiffs in there too, like Josh Rosen. But I'll tell you what, I think it's a race of who gets signed first.
Yeah, I was going to say, does Baker Mayfield fit? Does he stay in Cleveland, or do they say it's almost like, is this the evaluation of it? Is he the guy that can get us that Super Bowl?
Here's a bold prediction. I think Baker Mayfield takes less money to stay in Cleveland.
So you think he wants to be there?
I think he wants to be there, and I think he wants to win. That's what I think is going to happen.
All right. There you go. Jeff Kerr. We got plenty of all-season stories we will continue to throw around throughout the summer here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Will you be at Game 5 tonight?
I will not be at Game 5 tonight. I sold the tickets. But if there's a Game 7, I will be there. I will say that. You know what? My buddy decided to go. My buddy wanted to buy tickets from me. I said, have at it. Go have a blast.
All right. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL, and he, like August, appear via the Boardwalk on the hotline. All right, Jeff, have a good one, man.
Yeah, sounds great. Go Sixers.
All right, there he goes. Jeff Kerr, CBS NFL, I should say. And, of course, we will do it up again on Friday's show when NBA or NFL. We got so much NBA stuff happening. When NFL news happens, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, we'll have some news with Jeff coming up as well for the in-season NFL portion of the show. We're in the off-season mode here, but Jeff and I are working on some things for in-season. Can't wait to break that to you guys as well. By the way, Holy Spirit is up 7-0 as they are closing in on a state championship. So congratulations to the Spartans. It looks like they're going to win a state baseball title. I think the last time they did that was 2015. So it looks like Holy Spirit will win a state baseball championship. St. Augustine later tonight. Ocean City on Saturday. And we'll have coverage on our website, 973ESPN.com. All right, I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. We wrap up today's show with the sound of the day next. Let's finish things off today for the Sports Bash anyway. We got game night coming up next. Dave Weinberg is here from 97.3 ESPN.com, his extra points columns. And, of course, Kevin McCormick, our Sixers contributor, will be there tonight for Sixers and the Hawks. We got you covered on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage in South Jersey for your next local or long-distance move. Clark's Moving and Storage is your first call. They are dependable and always show up. Visit them online at clarksmoving.net. Josh Henning's my producer. And, all right, let's see what we got today. Jimmy Lynam, the coach, was on with me on yesterday's show, and he said this.
If Joe's going to be somewhat, as I'll use my word, compromised, involve Ben more in the half court, a la what you did in game number 2. I mean, Ben, come on. Ben was tremendous in game number 2 when they kind of went to him in that little sweet spot. And the second thing I want to tell you, I love when they pick and roll Ben Simmons. What do you want Ben to do when he's picking and rolling? Have the ball or set the pick? You ready? Flip the coin. I could care less. Put him in pick and roll. He's dynamite in either one of those roles.
All right, so will Ben Simmons have a big game 5 tonight, or are we going to be talking about Ben tomorrow not being aggressive enough?
Here's the problem, Mike.
What's the problem?
You brought this up before. Ben Simmons scores 4 points, the team wins a game. So what quantifies a big game from Simmons? Because some people say it's points. Some people might say it's assists. I say it's defense. So to me, how
defense,
do you quantify?
Defense is at the top of the list that he has to provide them.
Well,
otherwise,
it should be.
if he doesn't provide the defense on Trae Young, they're in trouble. We saw that in
some of
game
these
1.
knuckleheads out there, they don't believe that.
Well, because most people only care about scoring.
Which is stupid.
Okay, that's one word.
Well, it is. Listen,
I'm not disagreeing with you. The Sixers have enough scorers that they shouldn't need to rely on Ben Simmons to score.
Right. And also, let's be realistic. If Ben is focused on scoring, he may not be focused on facilitating. If he's not focused on facilitating,
I think he has to be better than he was in the second half, though. I definitely was disappointed. Normally, okay, he doesn't score. He controls the pace. He controls the tempo. He did not do that the other night.
I agree with that. But I think also the rest of the team just dropped the ball defensively in the fourth quarter.
I don't know that I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, they gave up 103 points.
Yeah, but there were stretches. You go back and watch that fourth quarter when John Collins was getting those wide open put back dunks, when Trae Young was penetrating
was
the
that
paint
bad
again
defense
and again.
though, or was that lack of? I mean, those were putbacks. Those were a hustle stuff.
Nobody was boxing out. They're out of defensive position.
Like we talked about with Hudrick, the on-ball defender wasn't the guy who had the bad night. It was, the pick and roll guy. It was, it was the miss and then not getting the rebound.
But to me, that's part of the defense.
Oh, okay, that's different then. I wouldn't say. I think that would be a different category. You're not being able to box out and get a rebound, as opposed to, hey, they missed the shot. You played good defense. I thought they played good defense. They didn't shoot the ball well at all. If you're not getting their shooting percentage the other night from 3-point, my God, was like 30%.
The Hawks shot 36% from the field in their game 4 win. There's no reason why the Sixers should have lost that game.
Right. So, but that's what I'm saying. If they shot 36% from the field and 30% from 3, you played pretty good defense.
They
scored 23 points, by the way, in the fourth quarter. Atlanta.
I felt in the fourth quarter that Atlanta was getting Trae Young downhill too much, and the Sixers weren't doing enough to stop it.
I thought Atlanta had grabbed the energy in that game. They played with more energy. Look, they scored 23 points in the fourth quarter. Philadelphia scored 18. They both played good defense. They both played horrible offense. My God, I can't believe you scored 18 points. You scored 38 total points in the second.
Unacceptable.
Jeez. All right, coming up tonight on game night, we mentioned Weinberg McCormick. I'll be back tomorrow with a good cast of characters. Keith Smith on why Joel Embiid's second-team All-NBA is a financial situation for both the Sixers and Joel Embiid. We'll have that. Plus, the Rank Report is back Todd Rank will be here as we'll recap the Sixers. You should see some of our text message back and forth. And by the way, I got to thank listener Jay Downing. I took a ride to Avalon today, and I found that Hazy Pup beer.
Ooh.
And I got a case and a half in my car.